Good evening, and welcome to Pynchon Pals, a podcast about finally reading Thomas Pynchon. My name is Patrick Fiorilli, and I'm joined, as always, by Andrew Tillett.
Good afternoon.
And Dury Long.
Good morning.
Up at the top, we'd like to thank our supporters at patreon.com. I'm just going to blow right past how clean that was. That's the professionalism that I'm bringing to this episode today. I'm only saying this for a bit. Up at the top, we'd like to thank our supporters at patreon.com/PynchonPals, where you can sign up for $5 a month to hear exclusive bonus episodes like our recent Q&A or our upcoming Tamala Space Cat 20.
It's called like
2033,
2010 space,
yeah.
punk space, or punk cat in space. It's got a real mouthful of a title.
Yeah, Tamala. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Tamala 2030 actually is the new movie that came out last year that is currently on the festival circuit. But we are watching Tamala 2010, A Punk Cat in Space. If you've never heard of that movie, it's apparently loosely based on The Crying of Lot 49, or at least heavily inspired in some ways. Whatever distinction you want to draw between loosely based and heavily inspired by, we'll be sure to engage with that question.
Subscribe to our Patreon to find out how loosely based or inspired by it is.
Yeah, on the One Battle After Another to Vineland, or One Battle After Another to Inherent Vice quotient.
Spectrum.
Yeah, we'll figure it out somewhere in there.
Or on the Master to Inherent Vice spectrum.
God, we got to start inventing new vectors of Pynchon adaptation after only 2 movies. All right, on tonight's episode, we are discussing episodes 1-8 to 113, or through 113 of Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, a book we are all reading for the very first time.
But first, Andrew, did you have some exciting news?
Oh, yeah. We're recording this episode about a week early. And if you know your space, you know that today is the day that Artemis 2 is supposed to launch. And it's supposed to launch while we're recording. It was on a delay, I think, because of an S-band transponder issue. But based on my YouTube stream, they've restarted the countdown. So hold on for about 8 minutes in when we do live reacts. Or at least I get quiet for a couple minutes during the discussion.
Yeah, we'll just, I'll transpose those live reacts to, that'll be our post-pod for this episode after the end credits. Just at some point in here, you know, maybe a rocket goes up into space.
And for those of us that don't work for NASA, how does the Artemis 2 relate to Thomas Pynchon?
But we started this wonderful book with a von Braun quote, and as we all know, we imported von Braun after the war and made him work for NASA if he didn't want to get hung and at the Nuremberg trials. That's probably not exactly how it went. But anyway, he worked on early NASA, and then we did Apollo, and now Artemis is the second round of Apollo, basically. So it's basically the von Braun grandchild, what we're about to watch launch.
Oh, God bless America. Speaking of historical tidbits, I actually uncovered one as I was doing some research for this episode. So I was digging through some files and through some connections of correspondence. It turns out that back in 1974, when this book was up for, they were submitting it to the Pulitzer Committee, it turns out that one particular judge and delegate from the Midwest, the upper Midwest, was like fighting really, really hard against giving Gravity's Rainbow the Pulitzer. And so there's some correspondence where Thomas Pynchon is recorded complaining about this awful delegate, the Wisconsin delegate for the Pulitzer hates the book. Will I ever win the prize? He asks. And in the correspondence that replies to him, that responds, a buddy of his says, "You? Never. Did the Kenosha kid?"
That's tough.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. I spent entirely too long coming up with that one.
Wow. And you asked us if we had anything to talk about at the top, and you just had that lock and loaded.
I did.
Wow.
Should we get into talking about the content
of the book?
Please, we got to get past whatever that was. I thought we were only going to get into the toilet later.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with. You never did the Kenosha Kid riffs, but I felt it was my duty. No pun intended. Y'all want a chapter summary for section 1.8?
Yes,
we were supposed to get here last episode, but now we're finally here. Episode 8, Spectro and Pointsman discuss the finer points of Pavlov, especially regarding the idea of the opposite, which manifests in the V2s arriving before their own sound. Pointsman pedophilically fetishizes the blank slate psyches of potential human subjects, and he's given Grigori an octopus.
Grigori was the high point for me of this chapter, or this episode. I like Grigori.
Yeah, surely Grigori has a bigger role to play in all of this at some point. You don't just introduce an octopus.
Do you guys know about Paul the octopus?
No.
No? You guys don't know about Paul? Okay.
Not by name.
Paul the octopus, also known as Octopus Paul Octopus or Die Krake Paul, was a German octopus that predicted World Cup matches between 2008 and 2010 and got like 12 of 14 major international games correct.
Wow.
How?
He was a soccer fan.
But how did he do the prediction?
He probably, pointed with one of his tentacles.
They put
a picture.
They put food into his tank in like a box, and they labeled each box with the flag of the nation playing, and then whichever one he went to was considered the winner, and he was right over 85% of the time.
Wow, he was basically Tyrone Slothrop.
So Gregory the Octopus could be very important if he's anything like Powell.
I'm trying not to get too attached to any animals that are introduced in this book because I am very concerned about their futures under the watch of Pointsman, who seems to want to dissect any living being that comes within sort of a 5-foot radius of him.
Yeah, I don't think it's just animals you got to watch out for.
I don't think we should get attached to the people either.
I'm trying to maintain a healthy boundaries with these characters.
I'm more concerned that we're going to really fall in with someone and they just do something heinous.
I have gotten a little attached to Roger and Jessica, which I feel like is setting me up for sadness later in this book.
Yeah, well, we'll return to them in our next episode here. So we're introduced to the interior of Saint Veronica's. So this is the hospital where Dr. Spectro is keeping tabs on human patients, or foxes as he calls them. They sort of wake up in the middle of the night. He runs around and stabs them with syringes. But he occasionally is called on by Dr. Pointsman here because he currently has a copy of the book, as they call it. And they have discussions about their Pavlovian tendencies on a night such as this one.
I think we talked about the book at the end of the last episode of the pod. I think it's mentioned that he's going. Yeah, it's mentioned that he's going to find the book, and it's, I guess, jointly owned by 7 individuals, and they sort of pass it around like a timeshare, even though Spectro has it right now. Pointsman needs to read up on something.
Yeah, so it is eventually more or less stated, or it's quoted from basically in one of the later chapters, but this book is volume 2 of Pavlov's Conditioned Reflexes in Psychiatry, which, it turns out, I now have Stephen C. Weisenberger's Gravity is Rainbow companion. So I've got some more historical fun facts to share.
Thank you, Stephen C. Weisenberger.
Yeah, we're in the Weisenberger zone. But it turns out that in point of historical fact, the warehouse where the newly translated second volumes of this book were stored in London was actually hit by a bomb. And most of the copies were destroyed. Yes, Terry?
The Artemis just launched.
Oh.
Just launched. The Artemis.
Y'all should have just interrupted me. What was I talking about?
Pavlov or something?
Pavlov or something?
I was busy watching a rocket.
Yeah, I was busy. Yeah. They're up. Okay. Do you guys want to get back to St. Veronica's?
Yeah. Back to Pynchon. Sorry about that.
Listener, if you want to hear our live reactions to the Artemis 2 rocket, you can listen to that after the end credits on this pod.
They're gonna do NASA's supposedly doing a 10-day broadcast. We could just live stream for 10 days our live react.
The Pynchon
Wow,
Pals
look at that
version
little dot in the sky. It's getting smaller. It's getting smaller.
Pynchon Pals version of the Olympics. Just live 24/7 coverage. We run out of things to talk about in hour 2.
Start reading the book out loud.
It might help, actually. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So the book...
You're telling us about how they bombed the book.
Yeah, they bombed the warehouse where the book was stored, or what we can presume to be the book at this point. I don't know if it's explicitly stated, but that seems to be what it is. It was, in fact, bombed, and like most of the copies were destroyed. So that is one of the reasons, presumably, why this translation is closely guarded.
Thomas Pynchon did arguably too much research.
So the main part of their discussion here is that Pointsman wants human subjects like Spectro has in this hospital. And of course, the relationship between test subject and patient, I think, is fraught and strained a little bit in their discussion here.
Does that tie at all to when he discusses about the paranoid patient who would be the master yet now feels himself a slave?
Yes.
I also thought it was fraught.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. They're in particular talking about Slothrop, and Pointsman a little bit has his eyes set on him, and we get a pre-sentiment of some of the discussions at the White Visitation regarding Slothrop. Amidst it all, we also get these flashes of the Lord of the Night, who is skulking around and occasionally, having these crushing darkness that envelops them and causes terror.
We also get Laszlo Jamf's name dropped.
Yeah, he'll come back
for the
up.
First time. Certainly.
I thought there was some interesting things going on prose-wise in this section.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I feel like Pynchon really has gone all in on the ellipses. Just crazy. And at certain points, I kind of was wondering what the ellipses were doing. I didn't really come up with an answer for this, but like on page 50, when we're talking about the Lord of the Night, it says, silence comes in, sculptured by spoke. Well, actually, I'll start a little earlier. I'm running into the same issue I did in Crying of Lot 49, where I'm starting in the middle of a paragraph and I don't know who's speaking.
I don't think anyone is speaking
well,
here.
There's a quote in the paragraph before this where it says, so Slothrop conceivably out in the city, the ambiance alone, suppose we considered the war itself as a laboratory. When the V2 hits, you see first the blast, then the sound of its falling, the normal order of the stimuli reversed that way, ... So he might turn a particular corner, enter a certain street, and for no clear reason feels suddenly, and then there's a ... the quote ends, and then silence comes in, sculptured by spoken dreams, by pained voices of the rocket bombed next door, Lord of the Night's children, etc., etc., praying to their master, sooner or later, an ab reaction, each one, all over this frost and harrowed city, ... new paragraph, as once again the floor is a giant lift propelling you with no warning towards your ceiling. And I feel like there's two things going on here. Like, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on with the ellipses, but then there's also this like shift in perspective, which happens a couple times in this chapter, where suddenly like you are pointsman, I think. Anyways, I was curious to hear what you all were taking from this, and because I feel like this shift in perspective was starting to happen more frequently in this segment.
Andrew, do you have an idea here?
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to say that I think the quote you started with, Dury, is Spectro speaking, based on the back and forth from page 49.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then it kind of suddenly shifts into...
Yeah, shifts into...
Like you being pointsman?
Yeah.
Yeah, my interpretation here, because what is happening in this, the floor is a giant lift propelling you towards the ceiling. The sight of your blood spurting from the flaccid stub of artery, snowy roof slates fallen across half your bed. You're put into the perspective of one of the victims of the V2 explosion.
I see. But then later on, I feel like you go into what I thought was pointsman's perspective.
Yeah, so I think that is after the next set of ellipses.
Okay, so when we switch to you, it's like a different you each time. Like, I feel like previously in an earlier chapter, it was Slothrop. And then here we switch to the perspective of one of the patients. And then just a page later, suddenly we're you and pointsman's sort of first person.
Yeah, where is the next you?
The next one is at the end of page 51.
Yeah.
It says, you have waited in these places into the early mornings, synced to the on-whitening of the interior. You know the arrivals schedule by heart, by hollow heart.
Yeah, I think this is pointsman.
I think so.
Waiting
like
at the
it
bus
was creepy.
station?
It was creepy enough to be pointsman.
Yes. Yeah.
He looks like he's trying to like select a child from the bus station to molest, dissect. Nothing good.
All of the above. I think it's worth moving through this kind of step by step, because I also sort of, especially because I've read this like a few times over the last couple of weeks based on our recording schedule, like it gets a little jumbled. But yeah, so the silence comes in. The Lord of the Night's Children is like a narratorial voice after we have this response from Spectro, who's talking about, okay, so why are you interested in Slothrop? Can we think of the war itself as a laboratory? We then cut. I talked in the last episode about how I feel like this book is filled with these kind of movie-like cuts between character perspectives.
This felt super cinematic to me.
And we get that here. We have the person who is in the building that is currently in the process of exploding. And then after the next set of ellipses, we have this transmarginal leap, this surrender, where the ideas of the opposite have come together and lost their oppositeness. And so I think at this point, we are carried into pointsman's theorizing, like almost as if this is like a gloss on the continued conversation that he's having with Spectro about, this idea of oppositeness and moving between the equivalent and the paradoxical phases, which we learn a little bit later on are when you are trying to condition a reflex in response to a stimulus, and then at some point you can go paradoxical, where the stimulus produces less of a response, or the conditioned stimulus produces less of a response, or the opposite response compared to the non-conditioned stimulus. Once again, I feel like I need to go check out Pavlov book from the library. Like, I've tried to do some digging. I went to Wikipedia was not super helpful. Like, the Encyclopedia Britannica entry was not terribly helpful either.
The only thing, the place that I found that explained it, I thought the most clearly was a website called changingminds.org, 3 stages of breakdown.
Okay, sure.
It has the 3 nice little definitions very succinctly in a way that I was on Wikipedia, and the Wikipedia definition was terrible.
Yeah.
Changingminds.org, everybody.
Do we need to put any disclaimers that we do not know what direction they're changing minds?
Other website, I didn't go to one other page, but they're for their definitions on these 3 terms.
Yeah, well, there you have it, folks. So, yeah, I think then at the point where we get to the transmarginal leap, we're in Pointsman's perspective, because then we are having these, sort of people displaced by the war say things like, letting go is so final. How do I know, doctor, that it'll ever come back? And the answer is trust us. After the rocket is so hollow, only mummery. Trust you. And then that seems once again to be dialogue from one of the patients or subjects, and both know it. Spectro feels so like a fraud, but carries on only because the pain continues to be so real. So actually, at that point, maybe we're in Spectro's head.
Yeah.
Because Spectro is the one who's dealing with sort of like the physical, a guy loses his arm or something and comes to Spectro at St. Veronica's.
We're in Spectro's head. And then
after another ellipsis,
then we kind of go into a third person a little bit and are kind of looking at, no, I think we're still in Spectro's head. Spectro is almost thinking about Pointsman, and then it cuts to a description of the bus station.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Pointsman's head. I need to start writing who we're with in the margins. So I guess that is the answer to what the ellipses are doing. It's switching the perspective.
Yeah.
We're in Slothrop, sorry. We're in Spectro's head. We're in Pointsman's head. We're in third person mode, like setting the scene. And I completely agree that this feels cinematic, and it keeps happening, where at times I feel almost like I'm reading a script or stage directions, and I'm getting a scene description of St. Veronica's downtown bus station, their crossroads, newly arrived on this fake parquetry, chewing gum, scuffed charcoal black, slicks of nighttime vomit. I'm getting like a scene description that I would use to create a film or a theater set or whatever.
It helps that it's in present tense, like a screenplay or a script.
And then we have dialogue, and then we have like the interior view. And I've almost been picturing a camera view changing every time these ellipses happen, where I'm picturing like a third person camera view, and then I'm picturing like a first person I am Pointsman camera view.
Yeah.
As a way of helping me follow what's going on in here.
Yeah, I think we've got it there. Because then we're in Pointsman for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Until the later ellipses, and then we switch back to third person.
To some extent, this feels like a more like a twistier or maybe a more sophisticated version of what was going on in the Cairo chapter in V, where it's switching perspectives constantly, except we're doing it sometimes in the same section, mid-paragraph almost, at some points. Like, you get a sense that this is something that Thomas Pynchon has sort of wanted to do for a long time, because he keeps doing it from his earliest work.
Yeah, and I think it's particularly interesting in here, and will be interesting to see how this evolves, because it seems as though much of the goal of Pointsman and these other doctors is to get inside the heads of people or animals and dissect them. And I feel as though we are being transported into different people's brains.
Yeah.
And that's also kind of what Pirate does in a psychic way. So, I feel like it's kind of an interesting technique thematically as well.
Should we talk about the children? So I read this a couple of different ways. The first time I read it, I thought that Pointsman here, the narrator through Pointsman, were talking about literal children. And I think, having looked at it sort of like 3 times at this point, that still might be the case. But there's also a layer here where, so Spectro and Pointsman are thinking about these victims of the bombings, of the rockets. And the narrator writes, "And those who do let go at last, out of each catharsis rise new children, painless, egoless, for one pulse of the between, tablet erased, new writing about to begin, hand and chalk poised in winter gloom over these poor human palimpsests, shivering under their government blankets, drugged, drowning in tears and snot of grief so real, torn from so deep that it surprises, seems more than their own."
So they're not actually children.
I think there's like the idea here, as I read it like the second time, is that we have this like this abreaction, which I think is a Pavlovian term as well for like a release, or they say catharsis here as well, like a release of emotion.
I read that it was a reliving of a repressed memory.
Yeah, that's the definition I saw as well.
Yeah.
Sort of a Freudian term, I suppose.
Merriam-Webster says the expression and emotional discharge of unconscious material, such as a repressed idea or emotion, by verbalization, especially in the presence of a therapist.
Okay, so you revisit the repressed memory as a way of releasing the emotion.
Correct. And so, yeah, this is like a Freudian term. It looks like Jung also talks about this. I don't actually know if Pavlov discusses it very much, but in any case, Spectro and Pointsman seem on the level here. So there's like an idea of, the way I interpreted it is that these people are coming in and they don't exactly remember the moment where the bomb went off. And then in the moment after, they express that repressed unconscious emotion and memory, they're like blank slates. Like the personality and the ego is sort of like wiped clean through accessing this trauma that brought them in front of Spectro and Pointsman in the first place. And in that way, they are like children, ready to be kind of like imprinted upon. And then Pointsman / the narrator's language surrounding this is extremely lustful and sexual and pedophilic. But I don't know that it is
actually pedophilic.
Literally like I am trying to find children in order to sexually assault them.
That makes more sense to me. I did not put that together myself, even on reading this a second time, but that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, that's I think a very good read, Patrick.
Yeah, because the things that we see Pointsman, there's the line, how Pointsman lusts after them, pretty children, how seductively they lie ranked in their iron bedsteads, their virginal sheets, the darlings so artlessly erotic.
Well, and then later at the train station, it makes a lot more sense. It says 1,000 children are shuffling out these doors tonight.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's a big shipment of kids coming in at the train station. That makes a lot more sense that it's...
Yeah, that these are adults arrived at the hospital.
Yes.
And Pointsman wants them to
experiment on...
To experiment
understand how they're responding to the war.
To provoke the abreaction that will,
Mm-hmm. I think Pavlov did talk about abreaction. I just did we need a psych expert on this pod, but I just did a quick Google and found an article about war neuroses and Pavlov and abreaction. So,
okay, so I guess it comes from Freud originally and is then developed by.
Yeah, I gotta do my reading on.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Debunked psychological methods.
I don't know that all of it's. I don't know that
Maybe it's not
all
all
of
debunked.
Pavlov is totally debunked. I think you can. Here's the thing: you can condition a reflex.
Yeah, it's
that
just like
you definitely
maybe
can.
not
do.
a good thing to do in all cases.
Oh, I've got
I
got
like,
a fun
cartoon
anecdote about that.
picture in the cartoon picture you see in your like sophomore high school biology textbook of like a dog smiling with a steak on a plate is not what we're getting here.
No, definitely not. So yes, then we get Pointsman is down by the bus station, like looking at the people arriving there and departing there. The soldiers, the people who were displaced because their homes have been blown up.
And he kind of picks out one.
Which one does he pick out?
I thought he picked out a child. Not a child, but a...
Oh, yeah. This is at the bottom of page 51. He does say...
yeah, he picks out, like, tonight's child has had a long trip here, hasn't slept, and kind of picks out a child that he wants, but then Spectro brings him an octopus instead, and he's quite disappointed.
That child may be an actual child. I have no idea. It gets confusing here whether he's talking about adults or children, because there's also... Little heels kick restless against the canvas bag, which feels very childlike.
Yeah.
So,
but where these children have run away from, I don't know. I feel like he's just picturing them as children almost. Like he's seeing the adults and seeing them as kids.
The way they're sort of all walking in like a daze almost like out of this train, I feel like is like would be reminiscent of a child who like doesn't really like is not like with a purpose when they're walking around.
Mm-hmm.
The way that like an adult is.
Right.
Presumably there are children in this group, though. Children live in homes that get bombed.
Yeah, there's probably some children, actual children mixed in here, but they're all children with respect to the war.
Yeah, and the sexualization concludes with the sort of bleakly Pynchon-esque line, yet for all his agonizing, all Pointsman will score presently is an octopus.
Yeah, Spectro's really trying to talk up this octopus, but Pointsman's not having it. He points out that octopi don't bark, but Pointsman's like, they're expensive. I'm not going to be able to maintain the tank. Anyways, they have a very long dialogue about the octopus, and Pointsman's like, no, I want a fox.
And specifically, he wants Slothrop.
Is Slothrop a fox?
Spectro refers to his patients as foxes.
Oh.
So Slothrop eventually gets to the White Visitation for Pisces interrogation, but presumably this is where Slothrop ends up first, because he gets the temporary duty that reassigns him to a hospital, which is St. Veronica's.
Right.
And so Pointsman is successful in coming down. I mean, presumably this was all orchestrated from the top down to begin with, but Pointsman is, I guess, does get Slothrop where he's trying to go, or Pisces gets Slothrop. Maybe Pointsman himself doesn't.
We see later that they're all sort of arguing about how they want to approach Slothrop, so it doesn't seem like it's a unilateral Pointsman move.
Yep, he gets an octopus. Correct. Then we find out he once had a dog, but didn't
he doesn't like dogs.
He doesn't like dogs because the dog only knows how to do things and doesn't know how to reverse them, which I thought was kind of funny. It can open doors but not close them. It can knock over garbage, but it can't clean it up.
So true. That kind of brings us to the end of the section.
That brings us to the end of that section.
Yep.
Shall we jump back to Raj and Jess?
Yeah.
If we must.
My favorite couple.
I like Roger and Jessica.
I love them.
There needs to be an OTP in every Pynchon novel, although I don't know who it was in The Crying of Lot 49. Kind of all the men were terrible.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's thinking about it. I
don't know. There's someone.
One true pairing, Oedipus and the Tristero conspiracy itself. Episode 1.9, Jessica and Roger are in their hideout. Jessica wishes the war could go on without the war. Roger has his own map of London, plotted to conform to Poisson's equation. He just wants
Like
people...
Don't pronounce it Poisson. What do you... Come
Poison?
on.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Poisson?
I've not taken a statistics class. How do you pronounce it?
Usually just Poisson in
Poisson.
English.
Poisson? Poisson. It's April 1st. Poisson d'avril. I think is the equivalent in Quebec. Okay, Poisson's equation. Roger just wants people to understand statistics and contrasts himself to pointsman who relies on binary oppositions. Roger and Jessica discuss their pre-war memories until a V2 hits nearby.
I thought the sentiment that Jessica wants the war to go on without the war was really interesting, and I feel like a little bit relatable when you think about, I keep maybe making a comparison to COVID-19 as another large world event that we all lived through. But I do feel like there was a sentiment at some points of liking the sort of like slowed downness of things in COVID-19. This was not the case for everybody, obviously, but enjoying having not so many things scheduled, being able to take more time with like the people you're closest with, and wanting that to continue, but not with the sort of horrible death and other things that accompany that. And I feel like that's something that Jessica and Roger are experiencing here, where their relationship maybe won't be able to last once the war ends. There's sort of an impending doom on their relationship that's associated with the end of this war. And so they at once want the war to end, but also are almost already kind of nostalgic for it.
There's certainly like a romanticism of the fact that their relationship is kind of taboo, and they're like living in this sort of no-go zone on the outside of London. And so they're sort of camping out all the time and roughing it a little bit. And, you know, you just got to go get a real job if the war ends. And you have to like go on dates to restaurants and stuff, and can't just like cuddle by the fire.
You can't just cuddle by a ruin in like a house that we talked about this last time, that like someone is eventually going to come home to this house, presuming they're not dead.
You can't live rent-free with your boyfriend anymore once the war ends.
And someday Beaver will come back.
Yeah, good old Nutria.
I also really like Jessica's observation. It says when she's thinking about Roger's equation, she's almost got it, nearly understands his Poisson equation, and yet can't quite put the two together, put her own enforced calm day-to-day alongside the pure numbers and keep them both in sight. Why is your equation only for angels, Roger? Why can't we do something down here? I feel like that really captured to me my struggles with statistics and also physics a little bit, of like, it's really hard to hold my day-to-day experience next to this more like abstracted version that's being taught to me that like, oh yeah, if you just imagined the world with no friction and, you know, this is how it would work, but it doesn't match up with my daily experience. And like, she's having trouble sort of matching how she feels sort of at peace with Roger, like with this picture of doom.
Yeah. What, remind me what page that was on about the angels?
55. I think it's also kind of like the idea that we can't do anything down here. I feel like that really matches up with like a lot of contemporary news culture of like the enormity of what's happening in the world is too much for sort of the human brain to really comprehend on a practical level. This like statistical situation, the true randomness and lack of causative effect with these rockets is hard for people to comprehend, so hard that they're trying to come up with some connection between Slothrop's sleeping around habits and the rockets landing. And I feel like that inhibits the sort of like day-to-day action or response. What do you do if you can't really comprehend what's happening?
Yeah, we get right after this, sort of the first time Mexico is sort of pushing back against all of these people. He says, "Why am I surrounded by statistical illiterates?" And that's sort of a theme that we get throughout the several of the sections in the reading today, and presumably going forward, where all of his coworkers are constantly trying to, tie all these red strings on their cork boards together, and he's just keeps trying to reiterate that they're randomly falling, and it's following this sort of equation of probability. And they, even when he explains that to them, they come to him as if he's sort of the guy in the room who's cracked the code. And I don't see the quote. Oh, here it says, he says, "Have I ever pretended to be anything I'm not? All I'm doing is plugging numbers into a well-known equation. You can look it up in a book and do it yourself."
Yeah, I think this ties into later on. He calls himself the the anti-pointsman. He calls pointsman the anti-Mexico.
Pointsman is the anti-Mexico.
And I think that's exactly true, that Pointsman's whole reality is founded on the idea that everything has a cause and effect. And if you could only dissect everything, you could figure out what the cause and effect of every sort of psychological anomaly is by looking at the physical body. And Mexico doesn't seem to believe in cause and effect at all.
Well, yeah, there's even, I really like the back and forth where Pointsman is just like, but like, I feel like this is an extremely relatable sentiment anytime statistics comes up. We're just like, but it seems like 3 rockets landed in this square yesterday. So what are the odds that it hits, another one hits here today? And Mexico is just like, that's the Monte Carlo fallacy. We've been over this 100 times. The rocket is just as likely today as it was yesterday, as it will be tomorrow.
And as he says, bombs are not dogs. No link, no memory, no conditioning.
A good quote.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
I'd throw this chapter into my intro to statistics class if I taught one.
You should teach one just to make them read this section.
Oh, God. I didn't do well enough in my college statistics class to teach an intro.
Teach the whole book. If you really want to understand statistics, you need to start with Gravity's Rainbow.
There's, oh, go ahead, Patrick.
You go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, can we talk about this equation for a minute?
Sure, please.
Like the Poisson. So, as we all know, a Poisson distribution is basically the probability that a discrete event will occur in a given amount of time.
Yes, of course.
And I looked it up to see if this had been done. Like, where is the Poisson frequency for these V2 rockets? And it turns out our good friend Thomas has done it again. Because I found a published article by a man named R.D. Clark from 1946 doing a Poisson distribution on V1 rockets or V1 flying bombs. It just says flying bombs in the sort of opening paragraph of the paper.
Yeah.
It's what I linked in the Discord chat. Right. And it turns out the flying bomb was almost exactly on for a Poisson distribution. So plugging in the numbers, the chances that no bombs would hit a square, and it's the exact same thing. It's like the 144 square kilometers broken up into 1/4 mile squares or 1/4 kilometer squares, just like Mexico does. The chances that no bomb would hit from the equation is 226.74, and the actual number of like London neighborhoods hit was 229. And then for one bomb it was 211.39, and the actual was 211.
Wow.
And so
it just maps pretty much 1 to 1.
Perfectly, yeah. So Roger's doing it with V2s, but our friend R.D. Clark, who was a fiduciary at an assurance company, did it with the V1.
Shout out to R.D. Clark. Yeah, I think this anxiety of not being able to live in the statistical universe because you are too burdened by experience and thing that feel like they should be correct but are not mathematically or probabilistically is, yeah, I think it's a super common human response. Again, if you think back to like the pandemic or something, like how many statistics were thrown around on news broadcasts and public outreach campaigns by medical professionals, statisticians, fiduciaries, what have you, and then kind of either disregarded by a public at large or like misunderstood or even, not necessarily to disparage the public, like statistics are confusing. Like just giving numbers to people and saying like, well, the statistics say this is not necessarily intuitive. It's almost anti-intuitive.
Well, and a lot of times the only way to make it intuitive is to draw some sort of analogy to something from everyday experience or to give a very concrete, actionable task or example to help make it's easy to tune out numbers, especially currently. Like, oh, you hear like 1,000, 1,000,000. Like, I just feel like it can easily. It's hard. It's not tangible.
It doesn't make it. It's so uncomfortable to be told that I guess the chances that your house are hit is just random. Like if you could say neighborhood A was hit yesterday, everyone go to neighborhood A because it won't be hit tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
You can sleep soundly at night, but you can't sleep soundly at night when it's just hope that tonight's not your night.
Yeah, as Jessica says, her response is, well, it isn't fair. And Roger is like, it's eminently fair. Everyone's equal. Everyone has the same chances of getting hit.
Yeah. This reminds me of a recent indie game called an indie video game called Unfair Flips, where the point of the game, it's a video game, but it's about flipping a coin and trying to get heads 10 times in a row. And that's the majority of the game, but then you can like manipulate the probabilities and like sort of upgrade your chances as you play the game more and more. And it started off, I think, in response to this being a popular like live streamer activity, trying to get 10 heads in a row just with like a physical coin, which is like, it could take you 30 seconds.
I heard a story one time about a statistics professor who would assign at the beginning of class to like flip a coin a couple of hundred times and then just like record the results in like an Excel sheet and send it to him. And then he could tell exactly who did or did not cheat, because if you cheated, you'd just be like head, tails, tails, head, tails, head, tails, head, head, tails. Like you'd never do more than like one or like maybe 2 or 3 in a row in a streak. But if you flipped a coin 500 times, you do just get, strings of 8, 10, 12 of the same thing in a row because you're doing it so many times.
Yeah.
I feel like I could figure out some analogy of that to figure out which of my students are using AI in their essays. I'll have to think on that further.
There's something there.
Speaking of computers.
Yeah, I was about to make the same segue.
Wow.
Bottom of page 56.
Yeah, there's some discussion of binary bits and
take a shot every time a 1 and 0 is talked about in a Pynchon novel.
Yeah, I wrote crying of lot 49 next to this because I think there's a similar passage in Crying of Lot 49 where it talks about the brain as sort of a set of tiny on-off elements. But basically, it draws this distinction between pointsmen who, quote, can only possess the 0 and the 1, and Mexico, who belongs the domain. To Mexico belongs the domain between 0 and 1. The middle pointsman has excluded from his persuasion the probabilities, which I thought was kind of interesting, just like in a historical computer science sense, given I mean, obviously computers are still at their fundamentals built with bits, but
for now,
for
until
now.
we get the qubits,
until the quantum
quantum revolution any day now
comes through. But the increasing importance of probability and statistics in modern computing as sort of the fundamental of machine learning and AI.
But it's also why computers are bad at doing true randomness. Like it's why when you need an actually true random system, you have to like take a photo of raindrops on like a window pane or something, or some sort of physical process that has more things going on than bits in a computer.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was a good example of that I was reading about recently that maybe I can remember it or put it in the show notes, but it was like some cryptography randomizer that is like actually in use at scale, like has some sort of physical component. It's like a camera pointed at something in order to achieve a random number sequence instead of the computer just doing it by itself.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is, I feel like this section, in addition to getting some nice stuff with Roger and Jessica, like the whole selection of chapters we read for today, like kind of keeps cutting back and forth to this ongoing conversation between Pointsman and Mexico at different times. Like they're walking on the beach, or like Pointsman shows up in Mexico's office or what have you. And we just, it's like a running thread through these otherwise fairly disparate chapters.
Yeah, it's interesting that they like they work close, like probably closer together than anyone else seems to. Like Mexico is part of Pointsman's lab, right? Don't we find that out when it talks about everyone working in the lab, or at least maybe he's just doing their stats for them?
I think he's sort of like on loan from Psi Section, because at one point it talks about him like the other guys in Psi Section.
It's nice that you can have friends across the aisle.
We'll get to what's happening between the aisles. But yeah, they seem to work very closely together, but also to constantly disagree. And
Roger seems genuinely frightened of Pointsman.
Who wouldn't be? Yeah,
he seems like a very creepy guy. Maybe vying for our worse than, what's his name?
Worse than Schoenmaker
award. Yeah.
Oh, I think he cleared that. It remains to be seen how far he's cleared.
He should be a finalist, maybe, but let's not give him the award on page 58 of 758.
There could be some far more nefarious characters that show up.
Yeah, we need the like worse than Schoenmaker award, and then the worse than Fopple award in honor of our two spectra of how bad guys get in V.
Yeah, and oh boy, I wasn't expecting Fopple to come back, but we'll get there.
The last thing I want to say on this page that we've been on for a long time is there's something sweet and also kind of poetic and revealing to Roger's character that in between the pages of his like college statistics textbook, this Whitaker and Watson, he has a little photo, a snapshot of Jessica.
Yeah.
That like he's a man of statistics, but like nestled in there is Jessica between the pages.
They seem really genuinely in love with each other.
Yeah.
I think Beaver needs to go find a new woman.
Beaver could be really nice. I don't know anything about Beaver.
He shouldn't get in the way of true love.
I bet he's not. There's no way he's a good guy.
When's the last time he saw Jessica?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, okay. So the last thing that happens in this chapter is they talk about their memories before the war. Anybody have any thoughts on them chatting about the pre-war?
Just that it was kind of interesting that Jessica didn't really have a lot of memories before the war and was kind of trying to get Roger to share. And they have sort of these little snippets of memories, cucumbers and brown onions on a chopping board, games, pinafores, girlfriends, a black alley kitten with white little feet.
Yeah, Roger is kind of annoying Jessica at this point, where she says, sometimes, but what does she want to say? That he must always be lovable, in need of her, and never, as now, the hovering statistical cherub who's never quite been to hell, but speaks as if he's one of the most fallen. Like, she kind of gets sick of his shit occasionally. And as we learned in the previous chapter, like, occasionally he tries to get under her skin, but can't really figure out a way to do so. But, like, he wants to needle her a little bit. He mimes being a sort of, like, old geezer telling war stories and grabbing at her. So there's still some sharp edges, I think, to their relationship.
What do we make of, I guess, Jessica not remembering before the war? Because she's an adult. Like, she was an adult before the war and she's an adult now. Is this a sort of a light version of the sort of childish, or not childish, the like sort of childness that Pointsman was talking about? With sort of like, is this like a light shell shocking occurring?
Yeah, I do think there's something interesting going on here with memory across these chapters, and memory shifting or changing depending on an event that happens to you. We're in people's brains a lot. I'll have to keep thinking about that. But I do think I think that's a good observation, Andrew, that, you know, she says nothing that's really gone that I can't ever find again about her memories. And then Roger's like, well, my memories have gone to all these various, you know, things that I did. I drunk away many of them. And so they have kind of this interesting comparison of what's happened to their memories. But she kind of just has little snippets.
Yeah, so I believe, so she is presumably somewhat younger than Roger. Roger's 30, I think it's confirmed
30.
At one point. So let's say she's, I don't know, 20, 22, if she's like somewhat significantly younger than him. So then before the war, she would have been like 15. So when she says she knows she was alive then, a child, but it's not what she means, like, she did kind of become an adult, possibly in the war.
Yeah, so she doesn't really remember what it's like to be an adult before the war.
Yeah, if she
and all her memories are very childish. It's like a boy named Robin, pinafores, girlfriends.
Yeah. So she is, to some extent, genuinely asking, like, what does it mean to be an adult outside of the war? When you were my age? Because then she also thinks it'll be like this when I'm 30. Flashes of several children, a garden, a window, voices. So she's like, when I'm his age, you know, after the war, what does that look like? Does it look like before the war?
Yeah, and he doesn't really give her an answer.
No.
That's fair. So it's sort of Dury's earlier metaphor. These are like Jessica's like a kid who graduated college during the pandemic.
Yeah, we keep returning to this comparison.
Well, it is like something's happening with temporality during that time period. Like, things speed up and slow down, and like, I don't know, even their relationship, would they ever have had such an extended or involved relationship if not for the war?
They're a COVID hookup. They decided to quarantine together.
But who else is there waiting to hook up? It's Death. Through the pantry door, standing watching them, quote, iron and patient, with a look that says, try to tickle me.
Yeah, rocket strikes in the distance and kind of brings them back to the present. I think there's a line earlier in this chapter where Jessica says, but where is the war? And it's interesting how the war feels far away. You know, it's happening on the continent. They'll like see the Battle of Britain several years ago at this point. It feels, they see the effects of the war. They see the people. They see the, you know, evacuated areas. But the violence of the war feels somewhat distant until it comes crashing back with these rockets that occasionally drop.
Mm-hmm. Always around the corner. Old death. Episode 10 time?
Episode 10.
All right, let's get through the summary. Let's get through the summary, and then we can all because we can't break before episode 10, or we'll have too much to talk about after the break.
Fair. That's fair.
Ahem. Episode 10. Under the influence of sodium amytal, Slothrop articulates variations on the words, "You never did the Kenosha Kid." The Pisces researchers ask him about his time back in the 30s at the Roseland Ballroom, a jazz club in a predominantly black neighborhood in Boston. He recalls / fantasizes / hallucinates losing his prized harmonica down the toilet and narrowly escaping sexual assault by a young man who textual clues identify as Malcolm X by slithering into the sewer himself. Slothrop muses on the flows and varieties of shit before emerging into a nightmare landscape of the American West. He meets Crutchfield, or Crouchfield, the one and only westward man, and several other essentially singular personages moments before a fateful confrontation with Toro Rojo.
What on earth was going on in this section?
Gravity's rainbow, baby.
That was a great summary. I took almost no notes in this section because I just sort of let it wash over me like this sewage.
I spent a good long while before turning the light out and going to sleep one night just on the Kenosha Kid section on the first 2 pages. So we could start there before we get into the rest of it.
I hope you two have some useful interpretations of this.
Andrew, do you have anything to start out with? I have some.
Can we start with who the Kenosha Kid is? Because I was trying to look this up, and everyone online was just saying Orson Welles, but then I couldn't figure out any textual thing that pointed to that, and everyone was just saying he's from Kenosha, and I was like, a lot of people are from Kenosha.
Yes.
I was having trouble Googling this as well because it just comes up with the shooter from Kenosha from a couple of years ago, which is obviously not the Kenosha Kid that Pynchon was referring to.
Yeah. Oh God, what was his name?
Kyle
Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse. Just I don't know. We have a lot of international listeners. It's become apparent to us. I don't know how.
That's fair.
How closely
how
people
widely
follow.
known that is, but maybe echoes that some of the racial issues brought up in this chapter have not gone away in the United States. Anyways.
Oh yes, for sure. No, so this actually the Weissenberger companion is helpful in unpacking, if only to say that basically this was an outstanding question in Pynchon scholarship for like a really long time. No one knew where this reference of the Kenosha Kid came from. Several people had related it to other characters in the book who interface at various points with Wisconsin. I'm not going to say them out loud because I don't want them to be spoilers. I don't think they're spoilers, but nonetheless, other folks thought like Orson Welles was a popular theory, as you saw, Andrew. But it seems like the closest to an actual definitive answer that anyone has gotten comes from, I posted in the chat, a pulp fiction story by a guy named Forbes Parkhill in the 1920s through the 1940s. Parkhill published a bunch of Western stories in pulp magazines. Western Rangers is the magazine that his novelette, The Kenosha Kid, was published in 1931. So this is presumably like the textual reference that Pynchon was going for, but no one could find this for a very long time. But it's to this Western story.
Okay.
So presumably, what is happening here is that Slothrop, under the influence of sodium amytal, which is was effectively being researched as a kind of like truth serum. So they're injecting him, he is getting really high. And he is, in the first part of this episode, have you ever had like a fever dream where there's like an object or a phrase that you like can't get out of your head and it keeps like repeating or recurring, or like you can't move past a particular thought, either, you know, if you've taken cold medicine or just like the fever has gotten to you? You know that experience?
No.
Not really.
No. I've had fever dreams like this. One time I had a really bad fever, and I just kept having this recurring thought of like Mr. Krabs in front of the Krusty Krab, but he kept multiplying. There kept being more and more Mr. Krabs. And like every time I closed my eyes, I just saw more and more Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob. So maybe I relate in a particular way to this sort of like feverish hallucination where you're just drawing on like an old cartoon you saw one time, or a Western story you remember reading back in the 30s of like, the Kenosha Kid. You never did the Kenosha Kid. You never did the Kenosha Kid. And inventing new ways. Okay, this is maybe a less universal experience. But he is thinking of, and they are enumerated in the text, 1, 2, 2.1, 3, 3.1, 4, 5, and 6, of different meanings of this phrase, you never did the Kenosha Kid, given various setups and scenarios, like the one that I tried to set up at the top of this episode. So if we go through them, in the first one, Slothrop is writing a letter to someone identified as the Kenosha Kid and says, "Did I bother you ever for anything in your life?" And then the Kenosha Kid responds, "Dear Mr. Slothrop, you never did. Signed, the Kenosha Kid." In the second example, the Kenosha, they're dances. So there's this youth who's like, "I did all these dances." One of them was called the Charleston. One of them's called the Big Apple. All of the dances are cities. And then there's an old veteran hoofer who says, "But you never did the Kenosha, kid," because the Kenosha is another dance. And then in 2.1, because...
Are we going to go through all of these?
The phrase is also... No, but I just want to get through the 2.1. Because the phrase is also
the best one.
A dance. It's the Castle Walk, the Lindy, the Kenosha Kid is now the dance that you never did. What one did you think was the best, Andrew?
I thought 2.1. I would also say that after 2.1 is where I started to glaze a little bit at this repeating joke.
I love this joke. This is my favorite part of the book so far. I think this is a beautiful little textual poem. And the fact that the whole episode is a shaggy dog story that wraps around to the same phrase by the end of it, magnificent.
I think Thomas wrote this one for you, Patrick, not me.
I don't want to take ownership of this chapter as a whole necessarily, but
this Kenosha Kid bit, let's say.
I do, yeah. It does it does something.
So once they get through the Kenosha Kid, the first 6 Kenosha Kid jokes, I guess we technically start the 7th Kenosha Kid joke.
Yeah, that's true.
Which
is
is
not identified as such.
Which is Pisces, an agent of Pisces, I suppose. It's just labeled as Pisces. This is also very much like a script, I suppose, because it's character : and then their speech. Pisces sort of cuts him off and says that they're specifically interested in hearing more about Boston and Roxbury specifically.
Yeah, and they're interested in hearing tell us about the black folks in Roxbury. That's what we're really trying to get at here, is like, we want to understand the American relationship to blackness and racism. And we've found you. You're the closest American we can find.
We have on
on
payroll.
Deck, yeah.
Yeah, we've hooked an American, and here's the thing we need from you. We need you to teach us the ways of American racism.
And
here's a bunch of drugs.
There's gotta be other ways. This just screams of government agency with too much money.
Yeah.
This is the way they've decided to go about figuring it out.
Off the rails. Yeah, and then he basic. I don't want to just repeat the Patrick summary again, the chapter summary, but he has his harmonica in the pocket and then goes to the bathroom and vomits.
Yeah, do we need to add beer, hamburgers, home fries, chef salad with French dressing, half a bottle of Moxie, and after dinner mints, a Clark bar, pound of salted peanuts, and a cherry from some Radcliffe girls old fashioned to the Pynchon?
It could be sort of the Slothrop special. It could be a platter where we serve everything that Slothrop vomited into the toilet.
Yeah.
Including a harmonica in the center.
A competitive eating competition.
I can't believe he stole the cherry out of this girl's old fashioned.
That's rude.
How rude.
I would be pissed if someone did that to me.
Just drunk ass college Slothrop walks through and just plucks it out of your drink.
Insufferable. He got what was coming to him.
So yeah, we're introduced to this. It's one of the jazz nights at the Roseland ballrooms.
Roseland, yeah.
Specifically, it is one of the sort of like white college boy nights. So the Roseland Ballroom, real place, as we'll also learn about in a second here, that did have sort of like segregated nights. So one night, all of the Harvard and Radcliffe and white college students came through, and then on the next night, it was a black audience. Which I think tells us something about the environment that Slothrop has found himself in.
Yeah, I felt like there was a real kinship in this segment with One Battle After Another and some of the sort of like racist fantasies of a white man that we are subjected to here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's what Pisces wants to get out of him.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Sean Penn's character.
Yeah.
In One Battle After Another.
Lockjaw.
And some of the lockjaw, thank you, and the kind of like racial fear that's like perpetuated in these, like this bizarre fantasy that he's having.
Yeah. So outside of the bathroom, they're playing the jazz standard Cherokee, which Charlie Yardbird Parker sort of made famous. And then the companion mentions that a lot of these details are drawn from like a particular interview with Charlie Parker and also from the autobiography of Malcolm X, who we are introduced to here in the form of Red, the guy who does shoe shines in the bathroom. This is not explicitly stated in the text, I guess, but Malcolm X, once upon a time, went by the nickname Red because of the color of his hair, worked doing shoe shines in the bathroom at the Roseland Ballroom. And so like a lot of these particular details, even down to the like rose-colored lights in the dance room, are just straight cribbed from his autobiography.
Did it again, Thomas. Did it again.
And we should say also that like the choice of Cherokee here, sort of like the co-opting of indigenous iconography and anxiety, is like also part of the thing that Pisces is trying to extract from Slothrop here. The idea that all these white college students are dancing to a song called Cherokee, performed by black jazz musicians, and the whole place is like suffused with like violence and anger. Seems to be part of the fever dream.
Yeah. I feel like none of us want to carry us into the next section here.
I could keep talking since I already did the chapter summary. So yeah, I won't get into all of the details here because they are fairly gnarly and graphic, but Red, alongside some other guys, comes up behind Slothrop as he's digging into the toilet to try and retrieve his harmonica, grabs some lubrication. Things get violent pretty quickly, and Slothrop
Goes down the drain.
He
Withers
decides
down.
Yeah, his best course of action is to follow the harmonica. 1, to go and find it, and 2, to escape what ends await him by remaining in this bathroom.
And then we have a very lengthy and graphic description of what it would be like to be in a sewer.
Not the fun description of a sewer like we had in V.
No.
This is the worst case.
If
Part of the sewer.
I wish I was back with Benny and the alligators. This was rough.
If I had a nickel for every time Thomas Pynchon took me on a tour of the sewer, I'd have 2 nickels.
We are under the street once again.
Jeez.
Yeah, the layerings of descriptive voice that Thomas Pynchon gives to shit and its varieties, it's impressive in a certain
Probably
sense.
unmatched in sort of
All of literature.
vaulted modern literature.
Outside of very specific erotica, probably unmatched.
This feels like the kind of, when they find they decode a tile that has been etched on in ancient Assyria, and they're like, we finally found what it means, and it's like a dirty joke. This is kind of what this feels like. It's like when you finally kind of get to what's going on, it's just a 10-page poop joke that he's making.
Yeah. At one point, Slothrop convinces himself that he can sort of see the people through their shit. If they're white anyway, if they're not white, he kind of doesn't know how to make heads or tails of it, but he's pretty sure he can get a read on anybody who shares his racial phenotype.
Sees JFK.
Yeah, Jack Kennedy shows up. Where the heck is that Jack tonight anyway? There's a line that I think some folks have seen as maybe speaking to things beyond Slothrop's immediate predicament of Jack. Might Jack have kept it from falling, violated gravity somehow? I think this comes up in discussions around the sort of magic eye JFK reading of The Crying of Lot 49.
Makes sense.
Yep.
That, I guess is the first thing I thought of, but also we've already read The Crying of Lot 49, so perhaps not the way it was intended.
Yada, 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 poop, poop, poop.
He swims into a town?
Yeah.
There's a tsunami into a town.
What's the town like?
Sort of a Western situation going on. We're kind of callback to our Kenosha kid book, I guess.
Yeah, a callback unknown for many decades that this was in fact a direct reference. The Kenosha kid in the story is apparently like a gambler who rolls into town and swindles people out of their money.
I was curious to hear what you thought of this bit, Patrick.
Me?
Yeah. He comes on this guy, and it says, "Here now is Crutchfield or Crouchfield, the westward men. Not archetypal westward men, but the only. Understand there was only one."
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
There's only one. This is him. I think... Did you have something to say, Andrew?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so Slothrop kind of emerges into this desolate landscape that's described as the place of... It is a place of sheltering from disaster. I sort of internalized this as this is the bottom of America. He is flushed down the toilet into where America's shit ends up.
Well, and you made the point to me, Patrick, when we were talking the other day, that this really calls back to shit, money, and the word. The sort of three things the Slothrop family historically profited off of.
Yeah. And I think we are getting we're definitely getting shit here. Money in the word, I think, are maybe implied.
Maybe come later. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we return to this town at some point in the text. I don't know. Precisely what is going on with the Crutchfield or Crouchfield, I'm not totally sure. But I think that the idea here is that this is the man who goes west. The westward man, meaning like this is the essential, the singular figure of European colonial America moving westward.
I just thought it was interesting, the distinction between like archetypal versus the only one. Because when you say that, I think, oh, it's like the archetypal westward man. He's like the pinnacle example of this.
Well, so
but
I guess
Thomas Pynchon makes really explicit the distinction that it's not the archetypal westward man, it's the only one.
Well, so what's archetype mean? Like etymologically, I want to get to the bottom of this.
Do you know why I thought of you when I read this section, Patrick?
No, why?
Patrick made a role-playing game a while ago called The Highwaymen.
Yeah, you can check it out on my website, www.patf.io.
Yeah.
Go play The Highwaymen after. It's a one-page RPG inspired by the country song by The Highwaymen.
Yeah, and the whole thing is about like the highwaymen is like one being. Like there are multiple highwaymen, but they're encapsulated in one being. And anyways, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw Crouchfield, the westward men. That like he is the amalgamation of all westward men have been amalgamated into the one westward man.
Yes. So I think that's partly right. I think the
Thanks for making an RPG that helped me understand that.
Sure, happy to help. I think the reason he is not an archetype is if we go back to the Greek, I knew arche of like beginning or origin, but Wikipedia has arche, beginning, origin, typos, which can mean, among other things, pattern, model, or type. So the idea is that it is the original that is a pattern from which other copies are made. And the distinction here is that there are no other copies. There is only this one westward man. And just like there is, as the line here is, there was only one Indian who ever fought him, only one fight, one victory, one loss, which rhymes a little bit with the Nazi slogan of Ein Reich, ein Volk, ein Führer, but also is true of everything in this landscape where there is only one of everything. The comparison is drawn to Noah's Ark, where there's two of everything. Here, there's only one of every entity.
So, like, kind of in this version of America, there's only really been one story.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea here is that, like, this is the one story of America, is like a radical reduction to the individual entity that is always in some sort of struggle against another individualized entity. There's always the self, the enemy, the battle. It's not one battle after another. It's just the one battle.
Just the one battle, actually.
Yeah, they sing some songs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, they do.
That we will not be repeating.
They are references to like actual, like extant cowboy songs and jazz standards and such. They're sort of like parodies. Crutchfield has a quote, little pard, and I came across the word pard, and I was like, surely that is a slur I've never heard before, which happens occasionally in Thomas Pynchon.
But it seems that it wasn't.
No,
it isn't.
No, it's like
slang.
Yeah, it's
just
Wild
good old
West,
wholesome slang.
Wild West slang for pardner. Howdy, pardner. That's my pard.
Well, you found one word in this section that we won't trip up on by reading it out loud.
Yeah, there's a funny bit in the companion where Weisenberger calls attention to one commenter on Pynchon who says that this term baffled him. And the annotation is like, seems to just be a shortening of partner. Not sure what's baffling about that.
I feel like that's the answer with Pynchon.
You start looking too much into things, turning over every rock.
You could either go down a deep rabbit hole or be like, yeah, this is just a short version of a normal word.
Yeah, so the part in this case is Huapo.
That doesn't help with the thinking it's a slur.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Who gets to this idea that like the one of everything rule down here applies to like every particular like quantization of like racial admixture, I guess, which also feels like a very American sentiment of like quantifying every type of multiraciality.
Yeah, like one drop of blood.
Yeah. There's one of every, like, Slothrop looks around and sees a bunch of women, and he's like, but there's a lot of women here, and, the answer is that, like, oh, yeah, but it's one from all these various tribes. Do we think that the energy drink company Red Bull took its name from Toro Rojo, the antagonist of Crutchfield here?
I think just the F1 sub team went after Toro Rojo.
They should change their name back to that just for like the American Grand Prix. As a little Gravity's Rainbow. Running a Gravity's Rainbow themed livery.
Look, they always talk about being rockets. Might as well.
That's true. Yeah, so the idea that we come to at the bottom of this is that there's like soon to be one of these classic, one might say archetypal Western standoffs. Like the black hat is going to roll into town, and then the white hat cowboy is going to shoot him dead where he stands.
What did you think about the sort of Q&A exchange in the middle here, where they're talking about the sort of racial breakdown or quantization? It says, wait a minute, there was only one Indian to begin with, the one that Crutchfield killed. Yes, look on it as an optimization problem. The country can best support only one of each. Then what about all of the others? Boston, London, the ones who live in cities. Are those people real or what? Some are real and some aren't. Well, are the real ones necessary or unnecessary? It depends on what you have in mind. Shit, I don't have anything in mind. We do. And then there's sort of an analogy to dead bodies in the snow.
Yeah, the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, then taking on the look, the sunny, Disneyfied look of numbered babies under white wool blankets, waiting to be sent to blessed parents. Like, do you think this is a exchange between Slothrop and his inquisitor from Pisces?
That's how I took it.
So if we go back, Pisces, okay. I was thinking about this. Pisces, when we were talking at the very beginning, I think is colonnated, right? Like it's Pisces colon, and here it's just Q period A period. So I think this is perhaps a two-sided conversation that the drugged Slothrop is having with himself.
Okay, so Slothrop,
whether that be, sort of or I guess the two, Slothrop, the character in the story, and Slothrop, the like inhabitation of a second person in the town. I feel like I've had the
oh, go ahead.
No, that's kind of the end of it. But it's sort of him it's him thinking of himself talking to another person.
Yeah, like the Q&A, the cues here are Slothrop, because it starts with Slothrop is puzzled. Isn't there supposed to be only one of each? Answer, yes. So the A here could be Crutchfield, presumably, like he's having the conversation with Crutchfild.
Right. So but Socratic dialogue.
I kind of assumed that like some of the at a point the like look on it as an optimization problem, or like we do have something in mind, sort of feels like cinematically it feels like you're mixing in the voice of the Pisces interrogator like with Crutchfield, where Slothrop is like still in the dream state but is also being asked these questions from like higher up in the interrogation room. But I think he's also kind of having the conversation with himself.
I could see that happening. I was going to say I kind of relate to the idea of like asking yourself a question in a dream. Like something happens in a dream and you're like, that didn't really make sense. That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Why'd that happen? And then trying to like explain it to yourself in the world of your dream while you're in the dream. And then I could definitely see like something that someone is saying to Slothrop outside of this dream or drug-induced state creeping in a little bit.
Well, the other thing about dreams is that they're all you. Everyone in the dream is you. When you have a conversation in the dream, I mean, this is, you know, classic Freudian shit, but like everything that happens in the dream is you.
But what is his conclusion about the reality of these people, that some of them are real and some of them aren't? Is it basically like there's only one of each of these races and then all the other people in the world are not real?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. I know I'm trying to make sense of like dream logic.
No, but I mean, this is what presumably in the concrete world of the text, this is what Pisces wants to extract, is like, how does the American mind understand race? And then what they presumably are getting out of this is like the American mind understands race as like there's basically one essential, like essentialized understanding of every race and every derivation of race.
Yeah, something that you sort of drill down into perpetually. You can sort of constantly be categorizing.
Yeah, and you quantify it and you adjust accordingly and you optimize. And I mean, I think that relates to the kind of like segregated dance floor from the beginning of this, is like you can hear this answer as like look on it as an optimization problem, that even something like segregation is an attempt to like quantify and optimize a racial anxiety.
Well, and categorization.
Yeah. Which brings us right back around to the, you know, death camps and the Nazi perspective.
Mm-hmm. And the sort of ones and zeros of the computers.
Yeah.
Where I feel like this type of racial categorization has only gotten more fraught with things like facial recognition or trying to categorize social groups using computational processes. I think a little later on we talk about trying to sort of quantify or computationalize human values.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're like starting to touch on some of those ideas.
Yeah, and then he's back in the neighborhood.
In Boston.
Yeah, in Boston. The next morning. In the very early dawn.
Yeah, he's having this conversation. I guess he has sort of a mental shift to this vision of the World War II battle. And then he has a mental shift back to the neighborhood in Boston. So it's sort of like in a dream when you're suddenly shifting location, or like having a flashback in the middle of like, or at the end of your dream.
Yeah, and I think this the last little bit here of like he sees shadows as like these stark contrasts of black and white holding in panda pattern across each of the regions of his face. Each of the regions a growth or mass of scar tissue. Like that this is just like compacted division and strife and tension across his face and also the face of the country.
And then we conclude with the Kenosha kid joke.
Yeah, can we do it? Do you want to, before we go to the, can we go into the break with a dramatic reading of the final Kenosha kid joke?
Sure. Who's Slothrop? Who's the voice?
I'll do Slothrop.
Okay. Dury, do you want to do the voice? I already did my own Kenosha kid voice. Yeah.
Okay. Where is he? Why didn't he show? Who are you?
The kid got busted. And you know me, Slothrop. Remember, I'm never.
You never did the Kenosha kid?
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Pynchon Pals will be right back after this.
Sit down, weary traveler. I am not what you seek. Join me in a meal to hear of my repentance.
Welcome back. Episode 11. Cryptosam darkens into melanin when exposed to semen, as witnessed when pirate reveals the top secret message scrawled discreetly onto a pornographic drawing that strongly resembles his long-lost love.
I like this episode. Less than 2 pages.
Short to the point.
Short and sweet, to the point. It was a nice aperitif after section 10.
Real sort of rated R invisible ink.
Yeah. Dury, what's the deal with this ink?
I feel like Patrick just explained it pretty well. It gets sent to, like, you get a message from the agency written in this ink with an image that will assist you if you're a man. I feel like they maybe haven't considered how a woman agent might decode this message. I guess, there
James
wasn't a lot of
Bond-
interest in workplace equality at this point in time.
James
but,
Bond, when he's on his top secret missions, finds a lot of time to have sex with people. If you're a spy, you just got to find someone.
That's like
find
a
a man
lot
to have
put
sex
on
with.
a woman, that as soon as you get this message, you have to like find a man to have sex with. I just feel like they like, does it? Okay, I'm so sorry I'm asking this question, but does it have to be fresh? Because like,
I mean, if we had
there
the
could
original
be a storage situation.
if we had the original advertising report here, perhaps.
And I feel
we
like
could
it
say.
defeats the point a little bit of the invisible message to send it alongside a piece of erotica where like they're basically telling you how to decode the message. I feel in your spy training, you should be brought up to speed.
Well, okay. So this is textual counterpoint. So the section starts off with a excerpt from a brochure written by Laszlo Jamf of a couple of sections ago.
Are we going with Jamf or Yampf?
It's probably Jamf
Collectively.
if he's a German, or like Jamf.
Yampf? Okay.
Jamf.
I've been saying Yampf in my head, but yeah, that's probably not right either.
I was saying Jamf, but yeah, if he's a German, it's probably Jamf. Although that's, I don't think a real name. Anyway, so it says that Cryptosam was invented by a German chemical company called IG Farben.
Do y'all know about IG Farben?
No.
They're a real company.
They are a real company. So the Weisenberger companion goes very deep into this, and I won't go into all of the details, but basically they were a real sort of like chemical company that had like was a large part of the like post World War I industrialization into the Nazi war machine. Like they had a bunch of connections like spiraling out and into the Nazi party, and were a large part of the kind of in the military industrialization of Germany. So like this is a particular Nazi coded company that is listed here.
Okay.
Farben is also means like colors in German.
They started out doing coal tar dye.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so they've developed this secret formula along with sort of German high command, and it's used to send these secret messages. And it specifically says that it's important that a thorough knowledge of the addressee's psychosexual profile be known as an invaluable aid. So because they send just a photo of
a drawing
of a drawing of a girl who kind of looks like Pirate's ex, he gets aroused. But if it's just some lady, it's
They
not
know-
necessarily a sexual drawing. It's just a drawing of something they know he will find sexual.
I don't know. She's wearing like a corselet of Belgian lace.
Yeah, but it's the stockings and the legs and feet that really get him going. And
Yeah,
they
I'm
know
just saying,
that.
like, coincidentally, someone else could get aroused by this photo.
It's true.
It seems like Scorpia looks pretty good in it.
But so we should be clear, this is the thing that was in the V2 rocket
Right.
sent
Yeah.
to Pirate. This is the
This-
mail that came
Oh,
for
at
him.
the banana breakfast.
Yeah.
Yes. The
This
mail
is the
he
mail
talks
he went
about,
to go
and then
pick
the thing he picks up at Greenwich Village is this. But does this mean that he's getting messages from the Germans? Because this message
Yeah.
we find out says go find
Because it came in that
he gets,
capsule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he gets told to go find another secret agent, and if this is if he's being communicated to with someone, at least someone behind German lines, if not a German.
Yeah, it could be
like,
a spy,
on behalf
in
of the
like a
German
British
government.
spy in Germany. Yeah.
Yeah. It does say the message is tantamount to an order from the highest levels. So
Yeah.
Thanks for putting that together for me. I didn't quite make all those
it's
connections.
not looking good for old Pirate. If Pirate's a
No.
Nazi,
There's
I liked
another-
Pirate.
There's another them.
Yeah.
He wonders if they know about his sexual proclivities, which it seems they do. They know everything.
Scorpia in this drawing has sharpened teeth, which reminded me of many of our other sharpened teeth individuals
Oh, you like
across.
ploy?
Yeah, ploy.
I didn't think of that.
Sexual icon ploy.
I think it's not irrelevant that this the cryptosam converts into melanin when it's ejaculated on based on the previous chapter, and the sort of like sexualized racial anxiety that we get at the start of it.
Mhm.
And the future chapters,
Yeah.
episodes. I guess the next one, but yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was that in this passage we get a mention of the rockets. They say, far away through the rain comes the crack blast of another German rocket, the third today. They hunt the sky like Wotan and his mad army,
Yeah.
which is another name for Odin, the god from Norse mythology. And Wotan / Odin mythologically sort of leads an army of the dead.
Yeah, Dury, you've watched me play a large part of The Witcher, and we
Mhm.
watched The Witcher. You know the Wild Hunt?
Yes.
This is the Wild Hunt.
Yes, they bring it up later.
Yeah.
That's where I'd heard that word before.
Yeah, it's The
I was
Witcher.
like, Wild Hunt. Man, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, no, it's it's the Wild Hunt. As also seen in, speaking of the Westward Man, like the Johnny Cash song Ghost Riders in the Sky is sort of like a Western interpretation of the Wild Hunt galloping
Interesting.
through
Okay,
the clouds.
I knew I'd heard that word before, but
Yep, it's The Witcher.
it's The Witcher.
Yeah. But Wotan is specifically like the Germanic name of Odin instead of the Norse name. And it comes up a little bit later that like that might play in some parts of Germany and not in others.
Ready for chapter 12? Episode 12.
Episode
12. Yeah. I have here, all right, here we go. What's going on with this book? The White Visitation is a former sanatorium that stands on an icy cliff. A radio setup on top broadcasts as part of Operation Blackwing the voice of Myron Grunton across the North Sea to Germany, where it foments racial anxiety, developed in part from Slothrop's recollections, in the shape of secret Herero Schwarzkommando. At the head of Pisces, the organization that occupies the White Visitation, is Brigadier Ernest Pudding, a beat enthusiast and relic of the First World War installed by Eisenhower and Schaeff, now mired in feudal bureaucracy and beset by power-hungry alphabet agencies, Pointsman's Abreaction Research Facility, and their apparent rivals in the Psi section among them. Everyone knows the war is winding down, which means the window of opportunity for organizational aggrandizement is closing. Dr. Geja Rosie Rosvolyi has his sights set on testing Slothrop.
That was a really good summary, Patrick. I feel like it, in fact, helped clarify a few things for me.
Yeah, we first begin with this like little landscape painting of the White Visitation, which I realized this chapter kind of makes it explicit, but it still took me a minute to realize that like the White Visitation is not an organization. The White Visitation is a building that houses an organization. There's a lot of landscape in this chapter. Feels almost gothic. Oh, super gothic, yeah. Yeah, we are introduced to Reg Lefroid, which I assumed is like a homophone for Freud, but also froid, like French for cold. F-R-O-I-D.
There's a lot of ice, snow imagery going on as well.
He escapes from the asylum back in 1925 and says that he can hear the Lord of the Sea. So now we've got the Lord of the Night, the Lord of the Sea. It's all feeling, to my ears, like a little Lovecraftian. Like there's these old gods waiting underneath the surface of the war and Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other pun here is Ick Regis, which I think takes its name from some actual places, but is also a homophone of egregious.
So can we talk about Operation Blackwing?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So if anybody thought that we wouldn't be revisiting the genocide that we spent a very long time on in the book V, they would be wrong. We come back to talking about the Hereros from Southwest Africa, which again, if anyone was not listening to our V episodes, was a genocide that the Germans perpetrated against the Herero and Nama people in Southwest Africa in the early 1900s.
Yeah, what is now Namibia.
Mm-hmm.
More or less.
Yeah. Where they killed, I believe, like 80% of the Herero population by some counts. And in sort of a genocide that many people saw as like a precursor to the Holocaust.
Yeah, and Thomas Pynchon definitely sees it as a precursor to the Holocaust.
The Holocaust, yeah. And here we get the description of the... So I got a little confused here. Your chapter summary helped to clarify for me what's going on. So the British are broadcasting rumors of this sort of secret like command
Herero uprising, basically.
The secret Herero uprising within Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first thing they did at the White Visitation was set up broadcast towers to broadcast across the channel into Germany. And this Myron Grunton, who works for the BBC, eventually comes up with a plan to try to sow this racial discord in Germany by playing over the radio waves that there's going to be this uprising.
Gotcha. So completely fictional uprising.
Yeah, trying to do some psychological warfare, some propaganda stuff.
This felt very like Birth of a Nation to me.
Well, that's why they go ask the American, like, hey, how does racism work for y'all?
Someone find a racist. We need him.
Yeah, how'd you make the KKK popular again?
And the way that that our friend from the BBC here, Grunton, is describing this is that like Germany was like a kind of like paternalistic figure leading to and following after this horrendous genocide. And so then like what possible designs could the Herero people have like infiltrating Germany. Like there's a little bit of a like a anxiety of like infiltration and subversion through like revenge, I guess.
There's a little bit of interesting history here that I stumbled upon when I was reading a little bit about this, which was that apparently shortly after or I guess in the period after World War I think I might be getting my timeline slightly wrong, but the British released a book detailing the genocide that the Germans perpetuated against the Herero and Nama people, not really out of the goodness of their heart, but because they wanted to convince Germany to let go of its colonies or like convince other countries to pressure Germany to let go of its colonies. And then Germany published a piece of counter propaganda that basically said, hey, the British colonies are also, there's violence being perpetrated against the people.
Yeah, interesting.
So anyways, there was an exchange between government organizations surrounding this. And the British at some point ended up sort of destroying their original account after a deal was struck. Anyways, it was an interesting little tidbit that I came across while I was reading about this.
I feel like we might have spoken about the English report when we talked about that chapter in V. Like, I think there might have been some statistics that it's like only recorded in this.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of I think it was maybe with a grain of salt, because it was in like, this is where this statistic is coming from.
Yeah. That sounds familiar.
It blows my mind that that presumably actually lots of people have read Gravity's Rainbow and don't have the 70 pages.
No.
I was like reading this and I was like,
what would you know about this?
Yeah, that most people are probably reading this as maybe their first or second Thomas Pynchon book and haven't read all 70 pages of chapter 10 of V or whatever chapter it was. And there's just all this background that just so heavily informs what is like this one paragraph. This is like one long paragraph over 2 pages, and there's so much background reading you have to do to understand it.
I mean, we spent 2 hours talking about that 70-page chapter.
Yeah.
So you can go back and listen to that. Whatever episode it was, whatever one we talked about Mondaugen's story. Even if you haven't read V and
maybe
don't
that
intend to, it might be a worthwhile, might be a worthwhile side project going back and listen to that episode. Bump up those numbers on that one. I think we might
dark. It's dark, just as a warning.
I think we might provide some useful context in that episode. Yeah, so this is also the other. Grunton wanted to call this conspiracy to, like, when he's broadcasting it to Germany, he wanted to call the conspiracy, the Herero conspiracy, the Wütende Heer, or the, like, raging army wild hunt. And then he thinks to himself, or someone else points out that, like, that is probably only going to really, like, be a culturally relevant name in certain parts of Germany that are more, like, I guess, northerly.
Maybe harder for the broadcast to reach.
Yeah, effectiveness in Bavaria might be less than optimum, is what someone responds to him. And so they decide eventually on the name, the Schwarzkommando. Schwarz being German for black, and Kommando, like commando, meaning like unit or command or force. But anyways, that is the name they decide on for their invented conspiracy here.
Really threw Eisenhower under the bus with this one.
Yeah, so we should point out that at this point, the Americans are here through SHAEF, which is, of course, a real
Supreme
organization.
Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've gotten, finally, explanations for a lot of the names that have been floating around. The White Visitation, Operation Blackwing.
And Pisces, which we now understand has Brigadier Pudding at its head and is made up of at least 2 distinct wings, which we've already talked about a little bit. The Abreaction Research Facility, or ARF. Get it? Because of all the
dog
dogs.
sound.
Yes,
Yeah,
I thought that was really funny.
That's the word that dogs say.
Arf, arf.
Where Pointsman has his experiments. And then the psi section, or are we going to be pedantic and say like psi section? What is the
psi section?
We're going to go with psi section? Okay.
Psi.
I just want to be consistent on the pod. I don't want another porpentine, porpentone situation.
I'm sorry, this is an interruption, but I just realized as you said Pisces that both Pisces and Poisson mean fish.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see if that comes back up.
Well, we've met the Lord of the Sea already, named Bert.
Bert.
Which at least one commenter, I wasn't going to bring this up, but since we're here talking about fish, it is maybe worth it. At least one commenter has drawn a comparison to Grimm's, there's a quote, Grimm's etymological somersaults in Teutonic mythology. The goddess Bertha appears in myths, as does the masculine god Berchtold or Bert, as, quote, the promoter of navigation among men and thus a quote-unquote lord of the sea. So Bert here is in fact a kind of mythological
There's a lot of mythology going
reference, yeah.
This is, I guess, when did Sesame Street come out? Because we do have a Bert and an Ernie in this chapter.
on. That's so true.
Yeah, Pynchon does love an anachronistic reference.
1969 it premiered.
Oh, yeah. You know it. Wait. Let's do our due diligence. When did Bert and Ernie first appear? Bert and Ernie. OG. Relationship to Bert and Ernie.
1969.
Yeah. Yeah, Bert.
Since the show's inception.
Okay, they're OGs. Shout out to Bert and Ernie, the Lord of the Sea and Brigadier Pudding here.
Wow.
Does Thomas Pynchon have a child who would have been alive and watching it?
I think his kid is younger.
I didn't know Thomas Pynchon had a kid.
Yeah.
Wikipedia says he has a kid, but it's not.
Yeah, he definitely has a kid. His kid's name is like in the credits of Inherent Vice. He like did some work on the thing.
Okay, well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, so anyways, ARF is, quote, a colony to the Metropolitan War, whereas Psi section is a colony dégagé and docile with no secular aspirations at all. Basically, everybody is like fighting for territory and money and funding, and especially Pointsman, who is, quote, constantly scheming.
Yeah, I think Pointsman is having his own reflections on the end of the war as Jessica and Roger are reflecting on how it might mean the end of their relationship. Pointsman is thinking that this war, this state he'd come to feel himself as citizen of, was to be adjourned and reconstituted as peace, and that, professionally speaking, he'd hardly got a thing out of it. So he's kind of frustrated that he hasn't really gotten the funding boost that he thought he would get from this war, and that it's coming to an end, and he hasn't had his great discovery.
Yeah, he's out here hunting dogs at all hours of the night.
Yeah, like he's not really been given much of a staff. He really thought he would kind of hit a windfall of government funding with this war, and really they've given him sort of a skeleton crew, I would say.
Yeah, everything under and on top of the roof of the White Visitation really seems to be just like a refuse pile of we, the government, Shafe, don't know what to do with some of these pieces.
Yeah, like here's a weirdo that's a little too difficult to let go, or maybe his research will come in useful. Let's give him, the smallest amount of funding that we could possibly give him on a monthly basis, and like a space in a sanatorium.
Up to and including Brigadier Pudding here, who
Brigadier
is a sort
broke my heart.
Doddering, sort of war traumatized old man.
He tried to retire And his retirement project was writing combinatorial accounts of British politics where he tried to walk through every possible scenario that could change the British political situation and what their consequences would be. But the problem was that the combinatorial, like, it took too long to get through all of the scenarios. And by the time he was getting through scenarios, the event had already happened. And he was like, my book keeps getting outpaced by the real life. Which I feel like also somehow connects back to Pointsman's own journey, where it's like he wants to dig and find the cause and effect of every single like psychological moment. And even if he could do that, it would probably take him so long to find every 1 and 0 that explains, you know, everyone's actions, that it would sort of cease to be meaningful.
What's the in math and computing, like there's like a point or like a floating integer, like a point something,
Like encoding?
yeah, encoding.
Yeah, like a variable can be like an integer or
A float.
like a float or like a floating point number, which is something that like has a decimal.
Yeah, which is like exactly the thing that Pointsman. Okay, yeah, because you also have fixed point arithmetic instead of like floating point arithmetic. Anyways,
Sure.
I think Pointsman may have something to do with it. Like, he is someone who cannot go between the numbers. He is the 1 or the 0, whereas it's Mexico who occupies the sort of like fractional and divisional, is what I'm trying to get at. Pudding is also a veteran of Passchendaele, and specifically, there's a reference to Polygon Wood here, which I thought surely had to be a made-up place name, but in point of fact is a real forest in Belgium.
Yeah, and so he's come back to work, and the position he was put in was not really the one he was seeking. He's sort of been put in charge of running things here at the White Visitation.
Yeah, there's a quote that he was brought up to believe in a literal chain of command, and the newer geometries confuse him with all of these overlapping groups and wayward intelligence agencies.
Us too, bud.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brigadier. Most relatable character so far.
Yeah, I think the description here of everything going on in the White Visitation is productive to mention, where he finds, quote, a disused hospital for the mad, a few token lunatics, an enormous pack of stolen dogs, cliques of spiritualists, vaudeville entertainers, wireless technicians, Kueists, Uzbekensians, Skinnerites, lobotomy enthusiasts, Dale Carnegie zealots, all exiled by the outbreak of war from pet schemes and manias damned, had the peace prolonged itself to differing degrees of failure. But he could be the salvation of any one of them.
That would be a horrible job, to be in charge of a bunch of sort of lunatic scientists who are desperate for funding.
Yeah.
I'm just at a former mental hospital.
Yeah, it's kind of
Just
like being
the
a
worst.
department chair.
Don't worry, dearie. I'll cut that from the final recording.
I thought it was funny.
So then we get a section with ARF
Yeah.
and their experiments on Vanya, the dog.
I wish there was less dog torture in this book.
So it turns out, speaking back to Andrew, your description of like the cartoon in the psychology textbook with the little dog salivating at the steak, that like Pavlov did a lot of study of stomachs and like gastric juices and acids and productions. And so all of this stuff about like rerouting glands into test tubes and like studying this, that, and the other chemical production in the body is like what Pavlov was doing in order to study all of these reactions, not just like holding a test tube under a dog's jowls.
Wow,
As maybe I kind of thought it was
That's
for
not
my
how
whole
it's
life.
presented in. I mean, I guess this is the You talk about textbook sugarcoating things, but usually think about the history books, not the entry-level biology books.
They don't want to talk about dog dissection.
Yeah.
Wow. Has it really come back in the sort of like mind-gut connection?
Yeah, like a lot of Pavlov's books were on like stomachs and digestion.
I feel like digestion is coming back into explanations of psychology in certain health circles.
Well, digestion comes back a lot in this book in the form of regurgitation.
Got to maintain your gut biome.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. We're getting the inside outside of the dog's brain, the interface, the cortex, the I/O, the 1 and the 0, I think, come up back again. We're introduced to a couple other folks running around the White Visitation, Webley Silvernail and Rollo Grost, who come up a couple more times, as does Rosie.
We get a series that I think will also have to show up in our cookbook.
These sound pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
It was kind of presented in a gross way, but
Which I don't know what toad in a hole is. That doesn't sound good, but I'm guessing it's something
the
sausage
toad in the
related.
hole was like intended to be bad. Can you lead us into this bit, Patrick?
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot because I've been failing at leading us in the middle of these paragraphs.
I didn't totally return back to this paragraph, but let me see if I can.
81, mid-page.
Yeah, no, I see it. It's the whole page.
It's the whole page.
Let me see if I can get my bearings. So he's having some of these like post-traumatic flashbacks to the mud of Flanders. Yeah. Brigadier Pudding is having these kind of post-traumatic flashbacks to the mud of Flanders, the stump of a tree. I liked this line. That had been the worst part of the whole Passchendaele horror, that absence of vertical interest, which is interesting because now everyone is interested in verticality because of the bombs dropping on the city.
I laughed at that because it sounded like driving across western Kansas.
That's true. And he's thinking about preparing beets. And this is what we get, is that this is how his sort of like all hands staff meetings go, is he just sort of waxes about the old war and then starts talking about beets kind of out of nowhere. There's a little bit of an implication of senility at this point.
Yeah, so it says, on he goes, gabbing, recipes for preparing beets in 100 tasty ways, or such cucurbitaceous improbabilities as earnest puddings gourds surprise.
It's another adjective, like musaceous or like banana family.
Yeah, it's like a cucumber.
Gourds. Yeah.
Gourds. Yes, there is something sadistic about recipes with surprise in the title. Chap who's hungry wants to just eat, not be surprised, really. Just wants to bite into the old potato, and be reasonably sure that there's nothing inside but potato, you see. Certainly not some clever nutmeg surprise. Some mashed pulp all magenta with pomegranates or something. I thought this bit was really funny.
Yeah.
And then, it talks about how Brigadier Pudding likes to play a joke on his dinner guests, that he makes a toad in the hole and then puts sort of unusual items inside of it, like a beet risole, a stuffed beet risole, or a pureed samphire, which I think is a fish, so that people will be like, digging into this tasty dish, and then surprise, there's something unappetizing in the middle.
Yeah, I have a quick fun game for y'all, which is
Let's play.
At the end of this, it says, none of these odd vegetable risoles do resemble any ordinary toad, but rather the depraved half-sentient creatures that young chaps from King's Road have affairs with in limericks. And I was hoping that the Weisenberger companion would illuminate this a little bit, but it just makes a point that King's Road is in Chelsea, where pirates, Maisonette, and like all those guys are. So like there's a relationship there with them. But the fact that it's a limerick implies to me that Thomas Pynchon must have had a limerick in mind of, there once were young chaps from King's Road. had affairs something with toads. And like I couldn't figure out, and like no one on the internet, as far as I could tell, had seemingly put together like what a possible limerick for this would be. Can you think of anything really dirty that rhymes with toad or toad in a hole or road? Like King's
Rizol rhyme?
Yeah, Rizol. This is, we don't have to solve this game now. This can be an ongoing game.
Please write in with your limerick.
If you want to come back next episode. Oh yeah, write in with a, just so long as it's like not so dirty that we can't read it on air, but you know.
I think at this point we could probably read most things on air.
We'll do our
best.
best.
As it's not offensive.
Yeah, as long as it's not offensive, let me put it that way. But yeah, I spent a good long while, not quite as long as I spent on the Kenosha kid stuff, trying to come up with like, there once were young chaps from King's Road.
Wow, you focused on different things than me in this.
Who had some affairs with a toad. But they weren't, but not in a hole, because that would be too droll.
We'll work on it.
And
yeah,
so on each other they did goad.
Iterate.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah. I've heard that the rewriting process is really where things come together.
yeah, that's right.
We were talking about Rosie.
Yeah, let's talk about Rosie.
Let's talk about Rosie. Andrew, you want to tell us about Rosie?
Yeah. So he is ex-Soviet Union and subsequently very not happy with the work being done by ARF, because I guess he's also subsequently anti-Pavlovian.
Yeah.
He does not get along at all with our good friend Pudding, and he believes more in the white visitation as an entity more so than the sort of people who are there, and he thinks as long as they're doing good work as a group, they'll surely continue to be successful in the interwar period.
This reminds me a little bit of the Stanley Kotex in The Crying of Lot 49, who's like, it's all anyone wants to talk about is teamwork. Whatever happened to like the individual inventor? And like now we're just siphoned into teams and working groups, and no one can take ownership of anything. He's the opposite. Yeah.
He's all we need to do is work together, and we will not need any individual to be a figurehead.
I think that as Slothrop descends through the sewage into the bottom of America, I feel like the white visitation might be sort of like the bottom of academia.
The military-industrial complex. Yeah.
The military-industrial complex, like squabbles over funding, confused leadership.
Confused, very old leadership.
Yeah. Research that seems harmful and also useless. The dregs of academia are here at the white visitation.
And also this idea of like that what Geisha wants is the replacement of personalities, quote, by abstractions of power. That if you just you organize your organizations appropriately, you don't run into the problems of sort of like charismatic fascism. You don't have these cults of personalities. Instead, you simply have organizations and the networks that develop between them.
He's also in an argument with a Reverend Dr. Paul Delanuit about whether or not a previously performed psychological test on Slothrop is good or not.
Yeah.
And if sort of the pros and cons of this MMPI test versus other potential tests that they could run.
Like the I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, but the Rorschach ink blot, which
Rorschach? Rorschach is how they pronounce it in
Rorschach
Watchmen.
ink blot, which shows up in the Master, coincidentally. Yeah. So I feel like these psychological tests were really having a moment at the end and after the war. He also seems to have like a real Kenosha kid emphasis. situation going on. Every other syllable in what he says is italicized.
Well,
I think he's doing one of those. He's like very angry. He's kind of doing this thing where every other like phrase ending word is emphasized to get his point across.
That is precisely why.
well, so there's another thing going on here. At least there's in what I read into it with his accent, which is one, he's Hungarian, presumably. I think his name means something in Hungarian. I can look that up in a second. But there's a note here that says eyebrows going a mile a minute, extraordinarily fluid and graceful hand gestures, resembling, most likely it is deliberate, and who can blame Rosie for trying to cash in, those of his most famous compatriot, though there's the inevitable bad side effect, staff who swear they've seen him crawling headfirst down the north facade of the White Visitation, for example, which
Doing
is to
Dracula?
say he's doing Dracula. He's like gesticulating and sounding like Dracula, who
Interesting.
crawls sort of like face first down the castle at one point.
Your Dracula
So
references
we actually
are
just need to
deeper
be
than mine.
reading. We need to be reading all this with a
Like a
very
Bela Lugosi Dracula voice. Yeah.
hyperbolic Hungarian accent. Precisely why. That works.
Precisely why.
It's more of a Count Chocula, but
It did also make me think we've been, I think, inconsistent here in how we're pronouncing the name Slothrop, but it's rendered here Slothrop. And I feel like I've kind of been saying Slothrop as two separate things, but it being emphasized here makes me think that it's supposed to be closer to like Winthrop or Slothrop
Slothrop.
as opposed to Slothrop.
Slothrop.
yeah,
Slothrop.
sort of your Zimmerman versus Zimmerman. You
Yeah.
sorta, you got to flow a little bit more.
So I've been
Slothrop.
trying to think that, like, you know, maybe it's Slothrop, like Winthrop.
Slothrop,
Slothrop.
Slothrop,
Or Slothrop? Slothrop?
Slothrop. Either way, just
Throp.
plow through
Throp.
it. Don't
Yeah.
don't get caught up on that.
Slothrop. Apologies to our Hungarian listeners
And our vampiric ones.
and our vampiric listeners. Yeah. Paul de la Nuit is of the night, and we've in French, and we've seen the Lord of the Night at other times in the text so far. Just a little talking name there. We end this episode with a real lengthy description of the architecture of kind of it rhymes with the beginning a little bit of the portrait of the White Visitation as a place.
Yes.
What kind of things? Did anything stand out to anyone?
The portrait on the ceiling sort of stood out to me. It said, lions cuddle with lambs, fruit spills lushly and without pause into the arms and about the feet of gentlemen and ladies, swains and milkmaids. No one's expression is quite right. The wee creatures leer, the fiercer beasts have a drugged or sedated look, and none of the humans have any eye contact at all. And that made me feel like they had sort of like an AI generated picture of like the Sistine Chapel on the ceiling of this sanatorium.
Yeah. They got-
Obviously anachronistic, but it did remind me of that. Of like no one looks quite right in this painting. Like they got a real knockoff to paint Christ's kingdom.
yeah, their gargoyles don't even work right. They're just like overflowing the
stopped up.
gutters. Yeah, they're stopped up.
I thought for a while, but I've been thinking a lot about gutters and drainage recently. It's been raining a lot here, and I got tripped up for a while with this description of gargoyles, thinking about the troubles of how you would deal with your gargoyles getting stopped up. Had never occurred to me before.
It did make me think, what's the going rate for a gargoyle these days? Could I get one and put it on my gutter? There's gotta be. Could I Temu a gargoyle?
Gargoyle drop shippers.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on to the final episode of our reading?
Well,
only
I
other-
just
No, we shan't.
no, we
No,
shan't.
no. We
Real
both have
fast.
final thoughts on this section.
Real fast. The end of the section was very ominous. I wanted to close with that after we go through this whole description of the architecture, it says the sentry, a dark figure in white webbing, stands port's arms in your masked headlamps, and you must halt for him. The dogs, engineered and lethal, are watching you from the woods. Presently, as evening comes on, a few bitter flakes of snow begin to fall. And I was wondering if this was like Slothrop?
Someone's arriving.
Someone is arriving at this sanatorium, and you are put in their position, and it feels very scary.
Yeah.
And also cinematic. I feel like that was where I finally kind of tuned into the...
Yeah, well, it rhymes a little bit with at the beginning of this chapter, they say from the very start of the war, there have been all of these cars, like black tinted window cars going back and forth from the White Visitation. Even before they had anything else set up there, there were mysterious comings and goings.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels like that.
Yeah, so this felt really like a camera shot where we're zoomed out, we're looking at the Gothic landscape, we're looking at the building, and then we like switch to the first person perspective of someone pulling up.
Well, it's the David Lynch shot of like the headlights in the dark on the hood of the car. Topiary the guards.
Okay, now we can go on to the next section.
Whoa. I also have a final thought. This sort of extended description of this building sort of, I guess it doesn't mirror, it reflects the sort of first 3 or 4 sentences of this section that we didn't really talk about, describe a pair of signs on the wall in like a German factory that say, was tust du für die Front, für den Sieg, was hast du heute für Deutschland getan? Which is approximately, what have you done for the front for victory? What have you done today for Germany? And that sort of precise sort of working conditions that they're describing here that are producing these like weapons that are falling out of the sky onto London. And then what London is doing against these rockets is this comical, goofy group of people in this like fun house painted building. Just
and this like crumbling Gothic torture house.
Yeah.
So this is, we brought together our best and brightest and we put them in a sanitarium with a mural on the ceiling to fight the war machine. Yeah, now we can move on.
You have any final thoughts, Patrick?
No, I've said my piece. I've said everything I want to say about episode 12. Which brings me to episode 13. My chapter summaries have gotten longer and longer in these last couple chapters, so bear with me. Episode 13, we learn that Slothrop was once the famous, infant Tyrone, a test subject of Cambridge's own Dr. Laszlo Yampf, conditioned to respond with an erection to a mystery stimulus. Now we learn conclusively that his hookup map corresponds exactly to Mexico's V2 map. Was his conditioned reflex extinguished, quote-unquote, beyond the zero? That is, could it have latently persisted, even in response to the opposite of its original causality? If he always visits the bomb sites several days before the bomb falls, what stimulus could he be responding so far in advance of its effect? Different researchers, including Rollo Grost and the Freudian Edward Treacle, have their theories. Jessica wanders to Mexico about the girls. On a cold walk, Mexico and Pointsman discuss Pavlov as, further down the beach, a black man ice skates under the eyes of the orchestrators of Operation Blackwing.
I realized I approved that summary before we started talking on air, but you guys are actually a mistake there. You said Yampf is of Cambridge, but he's of Harvard, which is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's not of the University of Cambridge.
No,
England,
that's what I
just
meant. I meant Cambridge, Mass.
Yeah, of course. I just wanted.
Yeah. Let me be clear. I'll put for future reference, Cambridge, Mass's own. Good catch. There we go. I've done it. Reader, the summary you will never see the document of has been adjusted accordingly.
The record reflects.
Yeah, we get more little dialogue here. That's fun. And another little quotation from a book of 50,000 insults out of
A Neil Nosepicker.
a small press in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where like apparently everybody knows Dr. Yampf. He's like a local celebrity ?
Well, it seems he did like a visiting residency at Harvard.
Yeah.
Where he experimented on infant Tyrone, which I guess is Tyrone Slothrop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this
because
is
he couldn't get the funding to do a much larger scale experiment. He decided to work with one child.
So there's some context here. This Watson and Rayner infant Albert experiment is real. And the idea was you put fuzzy things in front of a baby and then you make a loud clanging noise behind the baby, you know, where babies like don't know that things exist behind them. And then eventually the baby is conditioned to respond to fuzziness with terror because it expects the loud noise. And then it got so bad that one of the experiments was they had the baby's mom like put on a feather boa and the baby was terrified.
That's horrible.
Yeah. But a real experiment. And their justification was like, this seems really unethical and bad. And we'll admit it's not great, but think of all that we're learning about like baby fear and how many babies' lives will be improved from the sacrifices of this one infant Albert. So this is just the kind of shit that was going on at the time.
Yeah, and Jamf did a similar but more sexual experiment on baby Tyrone.
Yeah, he thinks fear is too open-ended. So he has to find something that, of course, is binary.
Much like a rocket and a banana, a binarism, I guess, kind of resembles a penis.
So I guess Slothrop went through this as a baby
Yeah.
and then has sort of moved on in his life, but everyone's kind of curious as to whether this stimulus condition is what has led him to quote unquote predict the falling of these rockets. And I was finally convinced. Thus far, I have been thinking that it's a coincidence because like he is going to the scene of the rocket, that's when he's sleeping with the women, and that all these people are just like confused because they don't know what Slothrop's mission is. But now it is clear to me why they're interested in Slothrop, both because he has this history, but also because he is predicting where the rockets fall before they fall.
Yeah.
That was not 100% clear to me before.
I don't think it's supposed to be 100% clear. I think we're supposed to pick up some relations between the maps, but here it is specified.
Yeah, so the important thing is that after his experiment was supposed to be finished, Yamf should have fully deconditioned him, because it says that the
That's
stimulus is sort of an unknown stimulus that I guess we the readers don't know, and I guess it's not in the experiment publication. But it seems like Yamf has accidentally not fully extinguished the reflex because it has persisted.
Very like sci-fi, say the code word and you snap sort of situation.
Yeah, Manchurian Candidate is the
I was thinking
the
of
Hollywood.
Dollhouse, but
well, Dollhouse also, yeah. But like the secret code phrase that changes your psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very Pavlovian. We also, way back earlier this evening when we talked about episode 8, this comes up where Spectro asks if he hadn't been one of Laszlo Yamp's subjects, would you be all this keen on him? And Pointsman replies, of course I would. So we already knew about Laszlo Yamp from way back when. The thing that I'm confused about is and maybe I'm supposed to be, is some of this Beyond the Zero stuff, which of course is the title of the first division of this book is beyond the zero. So the idea is that any reasonable researcher would extinguish, quote unquote, this conditioning. But Pavlov writes, we must realize that extinction can proceed beyond the point of reducing a reflex to zero. We cannot therefore judge the degree of extinction only by the magnitude of the reflex or its absence, since there can still be a silent extinction beyond the zero. Does that mean, like, you push it into the negative of the response to the stimulus? Like, does this get into the sort of like paradoxical phase stuff where you have the opposite response or a lessened response to the stimulus? Because I feel like that ties into some of these questions of causality and the opposition or the transposition of cause and effect. If like suddenly now the response is coming from the absence of the thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Wouldn't that just be a conditioning you for the opposite, though, if you go into the negative?
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if what is meant by beyond the zero means like a conditioning to the opposite. Because we've also had this discussion about like opposites back and forth, and I didn't get enough time to really dig into this before recording, but it's something I'm wondering as we continue reading the book. Like, how does going beyond the zero relate to this idea of the opposite that we know Pointsman through Pavlov is kind of obsessed with? Or does it just mean that, like, it's still there, you just can't extinguish it because it is beyond the 0 point?
That's kind of how I took it, I think. It's just
that might
like,
make more sense.
You can do all you can do to decondition the stimulus, but just because you do the stimulus and nothing happens doesn't mean that
the conditioning is beyond the 0.
Right. Like in the future, something could happen that is related to this conditioning, which seems to be, I guess, what we're seeing with adult Tyrone.
Yeah.
And so they speculate on a wide variety of things that maybe it could be the stimulus, and including, is there something that's affecting the women around Tyrone that like get him to, or, get them to open up to him sexually? Or
I think also her question is not just like, is it specifically the women around Tyrone, but like, why not study the women? Like could they could be all having sex like here with other people who aren't Slothrop.
Yeah, like it is like that very like we're focused on one man, but maybe we should be focused on the women.
We should be focused on these 50 women who keep having sex where the rockets drop.
Yeah. That's a really apt point. I knew I liked Jessica.
Yeah, it's very funny. And that comment gets under Roger's skin, where Roger's like, "What about the
girls? Is it the menstrual cycles?"
Yeah, Roger thinks it's statistics. Rollo thinks he's seeing things before they happen. Edwin thinks that he's like pulling them down from orbit onto himself psychokinetically.
We then cut to Pointsman and his experiences with the book, which you kind of talked about a little bit earlier, Patrick. And he has this almost erotic relationship to the book.
Yeah.
And then it kind of describes his journey into trying to make sense of the sort of conditioned reflex, like Pavlovian understanding of the human mind, as this sort of ball of yarn that he's been trying to follow through the labyrinth. And there's a lot of mythological references to Adriadna and the Minotaur.
Yeah, this is the idea that she gives the hero the yarn to move through the labyrinth because it's designed by Daedalus, and he's got to defeat the Minotaur at the center of the labyrinth in order to end the sort of like sacrifices to the Minotaur.
Yeah, who do you think the she is for Pointsman?
Is it Pavlov?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is like Pavlov his she's like giving him the yarn that he
it's
follows?
the thread.
He's got his tools, and he's just got to do the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick before we dive further into the labyrinth, in the first episode, I mentioned that you could almost hear the boing of the bed that Teddy Bloat falls onto.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Andrew, you said, could you imagine, I remember this because I edited the episode, you said, could you imagine if boing just appeared in the book on page 6? And in fact, boing, a hard-on appears on page 88. So we do eventually get the boing that, like Slothrop himself, I kind of presaged days before it happened. I just wanted to pat myself on the back there.
Job.
Yeah. I think this description of the labyrinth also feels very like binary and pointsy to me.
How so?
Well, in the sense that we see the picture of how Pointsman thinks of the world is this like this terrible labyrinth that he's trying to like find his way out of. And I think that relates to his kind of binary oppositeness of, you know, you get to an intersection, you go one way or another way in the labyrinth. You take a left or you take a right.
Yeah, there's a dialogue that happens here then between him and Roger Mexico. And Roger suggests that possibly this whole cause and effect thing has been taken too far, and maybe we should look at things from another angle. And he goes, no. You're 30 years old, man. There are no other angles. The only way, there's only forward into it or backward. Which I thought was, I don't know. I thought that was funny and also an apt characterization of how he views the world.
Yeah, well, it also sounds like, what is that bit from the very beginning of the book? For like the second page, this is not a disentanglement from, but a progressive nodding into. Mm-hmm. That like you just keep diving forward. And I think
he has no choice but to continue forward into the labyrinth or go backwards in the labyrinth.
Yeah.
But he couldn't like tunnel through a bush.
But he has the thread, so at least he knows where he's been. So he can only go forward. Or backward, I guess, but he's not going backwards.
Whereas I feel like Roger's ready to like mow the labyrinth down.
And then Pointsman has, quote, the most evil look that Roger has ever seen from a human face.
Yeah, just chilling. Reminded
Very
me
Dr.
of...
Hilarious.
I was thinking the same thing, Andrew.
Oh, God, he's smiling. Yeah, it's creepy.
This book, yeah, is doing a good job. Like Crying of Lot 49, I don't think this showed up so much in B. I like few moments where you get like some chills, like that moment where the person was entering the white visitation. Maybe that was Roger.
Well, Roger works there, though.
But he was showing up.
I guess that's true.
Anyways.
That bad every time you come to work. That's how I feel some mornings.
Anyways, there's been several moments in this book where you just kind of feel a chill.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happened a couple times in Crying of Lot 49 as well, where it's like, ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah, well, I think of the Strand Wolf in the fog in V.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something that Pynchon keeps going to and getting better at, like the kind of horror adjacent stuff.
Mm-hmm. And is really good at just like bouncing back and forth between sort of moments of humor, conversation, and then a really chilling line.
Well, it's him again. He's like working in the Gothic. He's doing the Gothic thing. For those listeners who haven't read V, like this chapter we've been talking about that's all about the Herero genocide, like is basically a haunted castle, you know, vampiric Gothic story. Like it's Edgar Allan Poe or Bram Stoker.
Wuthering Heights,
yeah. So I think this is like a mode that he is comfortable slipping into, Thomas Pynchon, I mean.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that comparison, but I do feel like the White Visitation feels like a callback to Foppel's mansion in that sense. House of Horrors.
Yeah, they're talking about the MMPI and the paradoxical and the ultra paradoxical phase, and I just liked the writing. They're talking about Slothrop. The scores clearly show it. He's psychopathically deviant, obsessive, a latent paranoiac. Well, Pavlov believed that obsessions and paranoid delusions were the result of certain, call them cells, neurons on the mosaic of the brain, being excited to the level where, through reciprocal induction, all the area around becomes inhibited. One bright, burning point surrounded by darkness.
Yeah, and then we kind of see how far Pointsman is willing to go. He says, but I will find his spots of inertia. I will find what they are if I have to open up his damned skull. So he's driven.
He wants to operate on a human so badly.
So badly.
He's going to do it no matter what.
And he needs Mexico for this, which is the thing that really unsettles Mexico is like, I just do like statistics. What do you want me for?
And Pointsman doesn't know, but he knows he needs him.
Yeah.
But he's also, Roger realizes the gravity of this and is very scared of Pointsman, but is also curious. Maybe has a little Oedipa in him, and really is intrigued by what's going on with Slothrop, what's going on with this map, what about the girls is eating at him.
He also hates his colleagues in the sci section, so maybe if he goes to the other lab, it'll be slightly better.
Yeah, and
he doesn't hate them. He just feels really alienated from them.
Yeah. So he might be sort of reluctantly in cahoots with Pointsman.
Beyond the senses, beyond death, beyond probabilities that are all Roger has to believe in. Oh, Jesse. His face against her bare, sleeping, intricately boned and tendoned back. I'm out of my depth in this.
And then we do a zoom out again. We see Pointsman in Mexico sort of walking. We have this kind of creepy gothic visual of the, what is it, the ironwork?
Yeah, so I looked
fence?
this up. Basically, there was a lot of anti-tank emplacements and like barricades and barbed wire and all sorts of stuff like all along many of the southern coastlines in Britain, just in case Germany ever tried a land invasion, which they never did. But so they're walking along and they see like all of these fortifications for an invasion that isn't going to happen. And then the way that like all of the fences and barbed wire, there's like a parallax effect going on where like they're intersecting in weird ways as they're like walking along at varying distances. And so it kind of hurts your eyes to look at several fences layered on top of each other.
A lattice, yeah.
Yeah, making this intricate lattice work. It's a good visual. I really like that one. Yeah, I think these little something about these moments, like the his face against her bare, sleeping, intricately boned and tendoned back, reminds me of just these little moments where Pynchon has the. I continually think back to that moment in V where it's the gentle sound of Rachel like brushing her hair.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, especially around women and like. Their bedrooms. I think Pynchon occasionally has these really precise, gentle images and sentences that crop up from time to time amidst all of the other kind of cacophony.
It's sort of the one reprieve I feel like this book is offering us from the violence of the war and the nastiness of the sewer.
Yeah, it's a nasty book.
And the scientific ick that's going on with these dogs. And I feel like the one reprieve we get is sort of the tenderness and softness of Jessica and Roger.
Jessica and Roger, like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We have to watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I'm glad we got here. Yeah, maybe
God.
The next one we can finally hop to it.
Can't believe I didn't put that together earlier.
Yeah, if you thought that was intentional, listener, it wasn't. Yeah, so the last image that we see is Myron Grunton and Edwin Treacle are, I guess, agents of Operation Blackwing, are watching this fella ice skate on a pond down below.
A black man.
Yeah, they call him their prototype.
So clearly trying to foment this.
Yeah, presumably he's going to go somewhere and do something.
To kind of make this rumor that they're spreading seem real.
Is he the guy who arrives in the car?
Oh, maybe.
Perhaps?
Maybe.
Yeah.
We sort of took this as they didn't know any black men, and so they had to sort of find a black man to hang out with. But yeah, him being an agent of they're bringing a lot of people in, so it is certainly possible that they've got him doing something active later in the book.
Yeah, well, he's quote, riding his blades, tall, dignified, as if born to them in ice, not desert. So presumably he might be Namibian, perhaps.
Yeah.
If they found someone from the desert.
Interesting.
There's small towns children who are scattering before him.
Mm-hmm.
He has a magic face, a face they know.
So we'll see what happens with that.
We'll see, yeah.
And Pointsman and Roger Mexico stroll off into the distance.
Yeah. Their footprints sort of washed away. What are our final thoughts on this section of the book? I feel like a lot of my initial questions were kind of answered. And now I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the book.
This was a lot.
I have more questions.
It's surprising that we're only 90 pages in.
Yeah.
It just feels like we've covered a lot of our ground. But yeah, all of the confusion about like what are these secret organizations pinned down. And we're only halfway through the first section.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, there's a lot left to happen here, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like the event, whatever the event is in the first section, and maybe the first section has no event, and that's maybe in the second section or the very long third section. Like, I'm curious, what is the thing that happens here?
We will see.
Then again, I don't think V or the Crying of Lot 49 had a thing that happened, per se.
Yeah, you're perhaps picking the wrong author for event-driven.
This was a lot. This was dense. I'm glad we saved a good chunk of this from the last episode. I feel like I've made more sense of it now talking it through with you two, so thanks.
Definitely.
As I always feel, having the pleasure of chatting through with you two.
Some things came together both on a plot level and also on a passage level, I would say.
You have any additional thoughts, Andrew?
I'm really glad we broke this section into 4 pieces. Can you imagine trying to do the remainder of this if we'd done like another 2 sections tonight and then had to do the rest of it in one more go?
Yeah.
Ooh, man.
Yeah, we did good. Maybe that brings us to next time. We'll be reading, what do I got here? Up to page 139. So episodes 14 through 17. That's only four episodes. How bad can it be?
Oh, we've learned.
I'm just gonna
we could go back to the sewers. Who's to say?
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep putting my foot in my mouth.
We could have 10 pages of different emphasis on different words.
Oh,
Gravity's rainbow. Gravity's rainbow.
Yes. So once again, that is up to page 139, episodes 14 through 17. I'm frantically trying to find my show notes here. There we go. I didn't need them because I know already to thank you for listening to Pynchon Pals. And thank you to Andrew Tillett.
You.
And to Dury Long.
Thank you.
For joining me. If you like what we're doing here, we'd love it if you left us a review on Apple Podcasts or on your podcatcher of choice. I already said what our next episode is going to be. If you'd like to get in touch with the show or submit a question to be answered on air, you can reach us at pynchonpals@gmail.com. Thank you. Several of y'all wrote in, not with questions, but just with like really nice things to say. And we appreciated reading them recently.
It really keeps us going.
It does. So, even if you don't have a question, we like reading mail of all sorts.
It brought me motivation through the depths of Slothrop's journey through the sewer.
Another thing that gives us motivation to keep plunging through the depravity of this book is your support, which you can offer at patreon.com/pynchonpals. Thank you to our patrons and supporters. As we mentioned up at the top, we'll be watching Tamala 2010, the space cat punk
cat in space.
Punk cat in space avant-garde anime film for the April bonus episode. Our theme music is Horology by the inimitable King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, released under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives license on the album Polygondwanaland. Pynchon Pals is produced and edited by me, Patrick Fiorilli. You can find more of my work alongside my newsletter, Critical Theory Craft, at my website, www.patf.io. You never did the Kenosha Kid?
You never did.
Kenosha Kid.
Okay, yeah, that the rocket is going up.
Basically they're going to do a couple laps of the Earth, and then they're going to do sort of a 24-hour, slightly more deep space loop. And then they're going to gravity slingshot out towards the moon and do a flyby and then come on home. Fun 10 days in a camper van sized space capsule with three of your buds.
There's 4 people on it?
There's 4 people on it.
That's wild. Couldn't be me.
Yeah, there's a chance that they will be the first people, or they will be the first people to leave sort of Earth's low Earth orbit since the Apollo era, and they might go the farthest away ever, sort of depending on, I guess, some factors from Earth.
Wow.
When did they get to outer space?
Probably like 90 more seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the main stage is like a 3-minute-ish thing.
So they're still not as high as the V2 rocket?
It's a great question. I don't know what the peak altitude of a V2 was. I don't think it was. I guess the one that they launched straight up was in space. But what was a like regular V2?
Surely that is in this book at some point.
This is why we're going to have to watch the that History Channel doc on the V2.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
Google says the combat range was 50 to 60 miles in altitude.
Yeah, that's what Wikipedia has it at. 55 miles maximum altitude on a long-range trajectory, 128 miles if launched vertically.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's impressive.
Shit, you can just like they're just in there. That's the curvature of the Earth. Good for them.
Okay. Do you guys want to get back to St. Veronica's?
Yeah. Back to Pynchon. Sorry about that.